caught them. We've caught them all.
Nuance. I want bold color.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, Chad is out tonight. One of those things. What can you do? I hope everybody's having a great night. Welcome everybody in the chat. Bread Maker, welcome, and everybody in DLive and other venues that I'm on. And I forgot to put the thing on. Hold on just a second. No, wrong one. Why isn't that working? Oh, crud. Here we go again. Oh, well. What? There we go. Gotta have those up. Come on. If you want to follow me, please check out any one of those. I'm on all of them. The username is on there as well. Makes it a whole lot easier. So, to get started, and I just actually was looking at the screen. Now they're trying to make up more stuff in the news, and this is another distraction. It's called Pardongate. Was there investigation of bribery, scam, and pardons? Come on, people. Give me a break. Give us all a break for a change. Oh, I got my screen up. Oops. That's one of them. There we go. So we have got tons of stuff going on. Tons. We got hearings. We got investigations still going on. We got distractions. Hello. Pardongate. We got phony elected presidents as usual, and not naming names, but Creepy or Joe. But anyway, just not to name drop them. Want to know what the hell? It's creepy ass. So we all have been waiting for a lot of stuff, and who has not been watching the hearings, you missed a whole bunch of stuff. You missed a whole bunch. You missed evidence. I have some clips from the Nevada hearings, just a few, and I got some from today. Some are a little bit lengthier than others, and I also have for you other things to deal with, and I think this is what we'll start. We'll start off with something good and positive. How's that? We all know General Flynn has been pardoned. Welcome, by the way. Thank you. You're very appreciated out there. Sorry. It's been a heck of a day as usual. It just never gets any easier, but that's okay. It's all worth it. First things first. Because General Flynn has been pardoned, he wrote a thank you to the president, and it says executive grant of ceremony, Donald J. Trump, president, to whom president shall come greetings and be known that to this day Donald Trump, president of the United States. This is actually the pardon. My apologies. My gosh. Where did I stop? Pursuit of my powers under the Article of 2, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution has granted into Michael T. Flynn full pardon. See if I can make that a little bit bigger. Just made it a little bit smaller. It's not good. Sorry, I gotta look at it. It's really small. For the change of making false statements in the federal investigation of the violation of Section 101, Title 18, United States Code, was charged in the information filed under document number in the United States District Court of Columbia in any of all possible offenses assure from the facts set forth in or he charged, claimed, or arrested the condition with the processing under the document number for all possible offenses within the investigation, inquiry, authority, and justification of the special counsel appointed on May 17th, 2017, including the Intel adoption order, there's number, and subsequent memoranda, reading of special counsel, investigatory authority, and now for any and all possible offenses, airing out the facts and criticisms known to, identified by, in any manner related to the investigation of the special counsel, including but not limited to any grand jury prosecutions proceedings in the United States District Court of Columbia or the United States Court, the Eastern District. In testimony, for I have honorably signed by name the and caused seal of department identity. So this is the actual pardon for General Flynn. I thought that was quite interesting. I've never actually seen one. I don't know how many people really do. So there was that. And he is a very gracious man. I'm very happy that he has been pardoned of all things. He deserves it. Now to what we have been watching, probably, if not all of us, most of us have. Okay, I don't need that. Don't need this. And we'll go there. We all know that the testimony of the election is still going on, and tomorrow Giuliani and Gina Ellis will be in Michigan to go for the council of hearing, and with that more evidence, I presume, and hopefully more witnesses. And if there are anybody out there with 100% eyewitnesses to any fraud, please come forth. Be brave, like these men and women that have come around the past few days, and to tell their testimony to the states, make their case for hearings. And it is very important that we all hear this, because the Democrats have been playing shenanigans like we know they usually do, but this is on a scale of Mount Everest, and it is just not good. I'm going to play this because this I just came across. And this is the gentleman. He is a millionaire. He defected from China. And he had a message for us. Let's see. I will put it there. That should be right. Comes with subtitles.
我上次我说，共产党他为啥不去给拜登打电话恭喜他？他不敢，啊，他还不想那么早，啊，不想那么早孤注一掷，他还没那么愚蠢，他知道他还有机会。西方的媒体，啊，这个国家所谓的沉默的力量、沼泽地的力量，会帮助他们赢，啊，他们很自信的。 包括他也知道爆料革命，啊，会站出来啊，抵消到他的所谓那些沉默的力量。但是今天我在直播这不同了，啊，我相信啊，共产党啊，中南坑很快就会正式给拜登打电话。为什么？因为他知道拜登真的赢不了了。 啊，他也知道美国真的掌握了他们造假和操控了，啊，不要忘了那个软件的根本发源地，就是文贵作为第二大股东的北京大学方正集团的方正科技。我上次我说。
I think that's very powerful that they were saying that the CCP was trying to actually target Mar-a-Lago. Which is the president's getaway in Florida. They are extremely desperate. The deep state is extremely nervous. They are running scared in many ways. You can tell by their mannerisms in the press. You can tell in the way they're handling, and this include rhinos, that they're handling all these hearings. There are people that just don't care. There are a lot of people who are dismissing it, like the media itself. There are governors, etc. There are judges that are playing around. They're just trying to run out the clock, I believe. So there's a lot of bad players, and I'm not going to say actors. I mean, I don't want to be so like freaking cliche and like everybody else says. So really, it has been very interesting the way a lot of these have been handled. And then here, I just want to play real quick James O'Keefe. He has hit CNN once again. He has been on yesterday and early this morning talking about new CNN undercover tapes. And now CNN is saying, oh, well, it's a felony. It's illegal. They're going to call the FBI and all this other shit when they know they have nothing. AT&T has already come out with a statement they're going to sell CNN. And they're all going to be out of a job. Well, at least most of them. Hopefully like Don Lemon and Tapper and all of them. They're all going to have the pink slip. They're probably going to have to go to CNBC. So he has gone to them and got some more tapes. Now, this is only a little bit. He said earlier today that it took months to get all this tape. So this is only one of God only knows how many clips.
CNN says on Jeff Zucker's 9 a.m. editorial conference call how they, the Democratic Party, powerful interest groups, may determine how CNN will cover Trump not conceding the presidential election.
I just want to underscore something that Michael said earlier about the transition and Trump, because I've been talking to a lot of people this morning on both sides, And I just keep hearing the same thing, both from Republicans who have not come out to congratulate Biden, but also to those who have in the Democrats. And that is that we have to be, news organizations have to be very careful and very responsible about not giving Trump too much of a platform on his not conceding, because they feel the transition can go forward. And other than the national security briefings, which are critical to start now, they just don't want us to exaggerate that Trump isn't leaving office. And I'm going to have a lot of specific reporting on that later today, but just big picture wanted to underscore what Michael had said.
Yep, agreed.
On the issue of why it's important to get the transition going right, the 9/11 report talks about one of the problems was that the trouble that was brewing got lost during the transition. So if you want a good concrete example of what happens when you don't have a good transition, go look at the Twin Towers.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point. I think it was discussed a little bit yesterday in terms of national security. I think it's really important to raise again. I would encourage folks to think about, that 9/11 Commission report and the lack of transition.
So they have always been against the president from day one since he's been president. Before, they loved him like everybody else, and now we're really finding out who the bad guys are. You have even governors, and you have senators, rhinos, Democrats, everybody who is and I usually use this very lightly, but I'm going to use it very directly. They're traitors. They betrayed this country. They betrayed us. They lied to us. They lied about the president. They continue to do it. And they make no bones about it. They're very open. They're very, very open about who and what they are. Now, it's like I said, CNN is up for sale, and it's their own damn fault. Nobody else's that this happened at all. So when you see, well, let me backtrack. When you start seeing things, I seen a tweet where they're now targeting like Republicans. It was a tweet somebody threw body bags in front of Senator Collins' apartment or house. That's disgusting. That is absolutely revolting. This is what the left is. They are sick people. They are very deranged. When they start doing shit like that, I mean, there's no civil thing about them. They're open with their hatred and everything else. Now, I cannot confirm. So, I did actually see a tweet where Rudy was not allowed to come into the Michigan Senate to do the hearings just yesterday. So apparently either this one individual changed his mind or it was false news. I haven't been having a chance to look into it yet. But if this individual did, I will campaign for a challenger, because, that's showing me what kind of people are. You don't want to hear the evidence. You don't want to know the truth. We need to get to the bottom of all this election stuff, because it is to the very fabric of our country that we do. And it is going to get more interesting now that we, quote unquote, supposedly have these servers from Germany that we caught, and from Venezuela. Now I'm starting to wonder why. I mean, I'm a little confused on the concept of the Venezuela connection, because we know China. No offense, Japan. We know China is doing a lot of the evil deeds right now. I showed you the other night how they were printing ballots. They were probably using the Houston consulate when they finally got kicked out. Told you about how many Chinese military we have caught and kicked them out. They have said that they were not in the military, and they were definitely connected. So this is really, really interesting, and it's sad. And like I said earlier, I'm trying to be a voice of reason, and I'm not trying to get the emotions going. Sometimes you can't help it, and it really pisses you off, makes you mad, because this should not be happening. Especially from our own people. Our own people are selling us out for money and power. This is the most, not to be repetitive, that this is a serious, very most important time in our lives. We must expose all the fraud. So again, anybody who has information, who is an eyewitness to the count ballot, who has been kicked out of the polls, please come forward, be brave, stand up, do what's right. And these poll watchers have not only told their story, but they have also brought the evidence to back up what they were saying. Okay, there we go. And I have a little special something put into this one, which I did not announce.
If you could just tell us in your
this is from Nevada,
in the simplest way possible,
Arizona,
as an expert, what is your opinion as to the validity of the numbers that were certified today by the Secretary of State and the governor about this election?
If I was an executive at a publicly traded company, I would never sign that, because I risk jail time and having all my money taken from me in lawsuits. So to answer your question, I would never ever have certified. I'd rather resign than have certified those results.
So your professional opinion is that the numbers are fraudulent?
I believe they're fraudulent based on the data. And my sister asked me a simple question this morning. She goes, "How sure are you?" And my sister's a pretty stubborn person like me. And I said, I'd be willing to put my life on it. I'm that sure about the analysis, assuming that the data that I got from the state and everything else was accurate. So, if you're giving me all inaccurate data from everywhere, then, that's my only caveat.
Well, thank you very much. Just for a minute.
The Wednesday before the Friday that we quit voting, so 10 days before they quit tabulating, they thought they were done. And then more truckloads of ballots would come in, and I'm like, how can you not know how many ballots are still out there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Would you repeat that? Yeah. They thought they were done.
They thought they were done,
and then
multiple times.
There was what?
Multiple times. The people that were running the rooms thought they were done or almost done, or were going to be done Wednesday morning, then Thursday morning, then Friday morning. Then it went on the whole next week. And I'm like, I asked the question, I'm like, you don't know how many ballots are still left to come in? So I don't know. I don't know who does, again, process project management.
I'm tracking with you, but what day did the truck show up? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, because what I heard the first time, what I thought I heard is a truckload of ballots showed up. Okay, just a minute. I want to make sure that we capture this properly. So there were trucks that showed up on the 3rd, and then the 4th, and then the 5th, and how long did that go on? How many
I
days?
wasn't there the whole last week, but I know.
For as long as you can recall, how many days?
My last day was the 10th, and they were still coming in.
Trucks.
Coming from a company called Runback that does the high-speed scanning and printing of duplications and I think the military ballots. So now I'm getting out of my comfort level here talking about this. I don't know what they're doing, but those ballots were coming in from a high-speed scanning company called Runback that apparently you haven't heard of Runback?
No, I've heard of Runback, man, but what I'm trying to figure out is whether they printed them or they scanned them, and if they scanned them off-site, to what purpose?
I can't tell you.
Because wasn't that your job to scan them? Well, I beg, not your job, but...
Yeah.
The,
No, all the high-speed scanning happens at Runback. So those ballots go to Runback. As far as I know, there were no observers there. I don't know. I never got called to work at Runback. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, with all due respect, Mr. Cook, now we've opened up a whole new can of worms.
Yeah, and again,
So
I don't know
this,
enough about it to be the witness.
no, that's fine. Your observation is useful here. So what you're telling me, I'm going to play this back to you a second. The scanning wasn't actually done on site at a Maricopa County structure. It was done someplace else.
Where they have very high-speed scanners, yeah.
Well, right now, I really don't care what the speed is. I want to know, were they Dominion scanners? Or they were...
No, I don't think it has anything to do with Dominion.
So I'm trying to understand, what was the purpose of scanning them in advance of them being tabulated on the Dominion equipment?
They were duplications, the ballots that wouldn't read through the tabulation machines. They were ballots that came in from military and overseas. But there were more ballots than that. So I don't know where the rest of them were coming from, because they kept bringing trays of them in. So I don't know where they were coming from. That's a question for the county employees to explain to you where those ballots came from that whole next week. I don't know where they came from.
Mr. Cook, are you done? Oh, I'm sorry.
If you could just tell us in your, in the simplest way possible as an expert, what is your opinion as to the validity of the numbers that were certified today by the Secretary of State and the Governor about this election?
If I was an executive at a publicly traded company, I would never sign that because I risk jail time and having all my money taken from me in lawsuits. So to answer your question, I would never, ever have certified. I'd rather resign than have certified those results.
So your professional opinion is that the numbers are fraudulent?
I believe they're fraudulent based on the data. And my sister asked me a simple question this morning. She goes, "How sure are you?" And my sister's a pretty stubborn person like me. And I said, I'd be willing to put my life on it. I'm that sure about the analysis, assuming that the data that I got from the state and everything else was accurate. So, if you're giving me all inaccurate data from everywhere, then, that's my only caveat.
This iteration process, again, with the computer was done, and the only one that we were able to come close to matching was this. And I want everyone to look at this carefully. So out of all the potential universe, which we've done, and we're going to continue doing this, by no means is this done, we find that the interesting possibility we find here is when the Democrat percentage is 130% Mr. Biden and negative 30% Mr. Trump, and the Republican percentage is 0-100, the Independent is 30%, 58%, Libertarian 0-60, 60-0. But what's extraordinary about this graph, again, we went through many, many, many iterations. It matches perfectly, near perfectly. The slopes match, the curves match, the shape match. So what this tells us is that this demographic distribution of allocation of party affiliations is what can generate this. And I find it highly implausible because this means that Mr. Biden got 130% of Democrat voters and negative 30%, and President Trump got negative 30%.
Hello, this is Mary Kemper with Voter Integrity Fund. May I please speak to Charles?
With us, who are you with?
Voter Integrity Fund. Charles Martz in the state of Arizona and is having requested an absentee ballot. Did you request an absentee ballot?
Absolutely did not.
And this is a gentleman who did a project. He was looking to find out who had an absentee ballot, who had voted, and who had not. So he had a lot of these. He is a privately run company, or if you will, this is a privately run project. So that's kind of what he was doing.
No. Okay, and did you... Okay, no. Okay, somebody from our team will follow up with you, and can you please give us the best phone number? Is it this...
So I'll play for you the second example.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, is this Zofa?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Taj. I'm with the Voter Integrity Fund. In the state of Arizona, it said that you requested the absentee ballot. I'm just making sure that you requested that ballot.
No, I did not request an absentee ballot.
Okay, somebody from our team will follow up with you. Is this a good number to follow back up with you on?
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, and you have a good day.
And now when we look back on it, the person who colluded with Russia was Hillary Clinton, and the person who got money from Russia was Joe Biden. Now we're facing not a false charge of collusion. We're facing multiple charges in multiple states of a unheard of in our history invasion of our sacred right to vote.
I kept looking at the screen because it seemed very odd. And in the bottom right-hand corner was a yellow banner. And I got into a position where I could see the yellow banner, which said low confidence. Then I started paying much closer attention to the signatures, thinking this didn't even make sense to me, because the signature on the ballot that was being compared to other signatures didn't even resemble in any way what they were comparing it to. They were completely illegible. They were just scribbles on the ballot. And there were 5 screeners screening low confidence ballots for an entire afternoon that I was in there. And I asked Celia what the low confidence said, and she said just not to worry about that, that this was a new program that they were testing.
Well, thank you very much. I've been watching the hearings, and they're fascinating, incredible, and I want to just thank all of you on doing this very brave thing. And I know some get heat, but I will tell you many more get praise from the American public. We got 74 million votes, 11 million more votes than we had in 2016. We were looking to get about 68 million votes, and we said that would easily win. Well, we got 74 million votes, and getting above that number even could hit 75. But we got 74 million, and we didn't win. But I know that we won Arizona, and we won Michigan, and we won Georgia, and we won Pennsylvania, and we won Wisconsin. But what they did is they played games, and games like nobody's ever seen before. This is the first time Republicans, or first time anyone has fought back. The 2020 election was rigged. It was a scam, and the whole world is watching, and they're laughing at our country. They're laughing at us. They know who won, and we won by a lot. The poll watchers were thrown out of buildings or put at very far away distances, but they were thrown out of buildings in numerous of the states. You have people that came in to vote, and they were told, I'm sorry, but you've already voted. We've received your ballot. No, I never voted. I'm very proud to vote. November 3rd, I'm very proud to vote. No, we have your ballot. And they would go in and they would sign a complaint, and in some cases they went home and they cried. They've never seen anything like it. We have thousands and thousands of people that walked in. This shows you how arrogant the Democrats and others were in taking away and stealing an election, because that's what they've tried to do, is steal it. And the easy route for me, when everyone's saying, oh, just focus on 2024, sir, focus on 2024, I said, no, I have to focus on 2 weeks ago, because this is the greatest scam ever perpetrated upon our country. This is the big one. And we went through plenty. We went through the phony Russia, and the phony impeachment and all of the different things. And then on top of it, you have a governor named Ducey who just rushed, couldn't have gone faster. He just rushed to sign certificates so that Kelly gets into the Senate as soon as possible. What's that all about? He didn't have to sign. And I say, why would he sign when you have these incredible hearings going on that's showing such corruption and such horrible fraud on the American people and the people of Arizona? So you have to figure out what's that all about with Ducey. He couldn't go fast enough. And I just say that I want to thank you. We're going to win this thing. We're not giving up ever. We will never give up. There's never been anything like this. Thousands and thousands of votes were cast, and you have some people that were paid to vote. You know that. And, you know, we're only down to 9,000 votes. It's a very small number of votes relative to millions cast. We lost Arizona by 9,000 votes. That's a tiny fraction. Now, that would be a half a day, a couple of hours of checking. Well, I will tell you, we are going to fight. We're taking it up all the way. We have additional cases being filed probably tomorrow in Wisconsin and in Georgia. And they're good cases. They're very strong cases by great lawyers and with great facts. And Arizona will not forget what Ducey just did. We're not going to forget the people of Arizona. We had some of the greatest rallies we've ever had. I left those rallies. A lot of you probably were there. And I said, there's no way we lose this state. And we didn't lose the state. We didn't lose the state. We won it by a lot. But I just want to thank everybody. I'm watching it, and a lot of people are watching it on OAN and a couple of others that are ratings machines. Their ratings are going through the roof because they're telling the truth. And others are being hurt, as you probably have heard. Other networks are being very badly hurt because when they don't follow us, they don't do very well. But the world is watching, and this country is watching, and we admire all of the people, and that includes the fantastic representatives, politicians, but these representatives that are up there and doing a great job. And what they don't realize is they may hear some things, but they're becoming legend. They're becoming legend for taking this on. The country really appreciates it. The country really does. And we have more than they do. I represent everybody, but this was a scam, and we have to get down to the bottom of it. I want to thank Rudy and his team for doing such an incredible job and for having the courage to do it. Many lawyers had to leave because they were threatened. So for having the courage, Rudy, we thank you. And, you know, Rudy was, and I say this, Rudy was the greatest mayor in the history of New York by far. You look at what happened to New York. I mean, you look at what's going on right now. He was the greatest we've ever had. And I told Rudy the other day, what you're doing right now concerning the elections of United States President and other elections, but concerning the election of the President of the United States, and as good as being mayor was, and so important, but this is far more important, is the most important thing you've ever done. So I want to thank Rudy. I want to thank all of the political representatives, and I want to thank all of the incredible witnesses for showing bravery and love of your country. Thank you all very much.
You are the sole guardian to combat a corrupted election. And there was a purpose and a design for that. Because when the founders understood the separation of powers, when they understood that the human heart is corrupt, and they understood that there would always be attacks upon our liberty and freedom, they wanted to make sure that the will of the people in the selection of our president, our chief magistrate, would be vested in a body that is separate from that corruption and could look honestly at what happened and be fact finders. You have been fact finders here today. And the mayor and I have both practiced criminal law, me a little bit less than he has, just a few years behind him. And we have a standard in criminal law called beyond reasonable doubt. And every jury that I've spoken to, as both a prosecutor and then a criminal defense attorney, we have the definition of reasonable doubt. And it's a doubt that's not vague, imaginary, or speculative, but a doubt that causes a reasonable person to hesitate to act in matters of importance concerning themselves. Why is your governor and your secretary of state not hesitating to act? There is more than reasonable doubt here on the certification of this election. There is so much evidence that we've been denied the opportunity to present in court that you've only heard a fraction of it today. And you don't have to have a standard beyond a reasonable doubt in order to reclaim your Article 2, Section 1.2 authority. The Constitution does not provide a standard of law. It simply empowers you to act. And I would encourage and argue and charge you that this was given expressly to you for the sole purpose of making sure that the people that you represent here in the great state of Arizona are not disenfranchised by corruption. The law is on your side, and also it's in accord with federal law. In the explanation and the packet that we gave to you earlier on the brief explanation of the law, it also is in accord with federal law. Section 2 of Title 8 provides that when any state has held an election for the purpose of choosing electors and has failed to make a choice on the day prescribed by law, the electors may be appointed on a subsequent day in such manner as the legislature of such state may direct.
That's right. She spoke so well. They all did such a great job yesterday. Let me cue this up real quick. Okay. Now, I think they are doing a bang-up job. They did a wonderful job in Pennsylvania. They did yesterday, and they did again today with the witnesses, but it was basically just testimony. The witnesses who did speak were there honestly. They all signed affidavits, and it was under the penalty of perjury. Now, as Ms. Elwood said, it is their duty to deal with this issue, and so many haven't. Why are they scared? These people are protected by the government as the law enforcement. The law enforcement will protect them and investigate any threats, and they should. These legislators and citizens should not have to worry about being threatened. I've heard of somebody being beat up and put in a hospital. This is so unacceptable. That should not make anybody afraid to step forward. It's the right thing to do. And with our Constitution solely on the line, when you watch these legislators, especially in Pennsylvania, especially in Arizona, they look like, they look like they're ready to go to work. Why haven't they? It should not take this long when you realize there's a problem to go forth and do your job. I was watching the one in Michigan today, and most of them really didn't seem interested. It's like they had to be there. Maybe one person. He was into it. He was asking questions. The rest of them just didn't seem to really... It's like, well, we're here. And here is the one in Michigan. Let me get that one for you. I believe it is this one. No, yeah, I think that was it. A little delay. Yep. Okay.
Welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee.
Hi,
You have
thank
3
you.
minutes.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
My name is Melissa Carone. I am a resident of Wayne County. I have a background in IT and cybersecurity. I was contracted by PDS Staffing to work with Dominion Voting Systems, assisting with IT at the TCF Center. I started work at 6 a.m. on November 3rd, and I worked until 5
Read,
a.m.
Monica.
on November 4th. I returned to work at 10 a.m. November 4th and worked until 2 p.m. November 4th. I was initially supposed to return back to work around 4, but I was told via text through one of the other Dominion workers named Samuel that I wasn't needed, that they were almost finished counting. I wasn't going to mention this, being that it has been mentioned numerous times. I'm going to. I was initially supposed to be working. I was initially supposed to be working at the Department of Elections. That was an order from Dominion Voting Systems. They told me that I would be parking in a parking lot and I would be shuttled in through a shuttle. I called my mother and I told my mother about this, and my mom said, no, absolutely not, you're not doing that. I also had a concern about that because I do have two small young children at home and I needed access to my vehicle. What I witnessed at the TCF Center was complete fraud. The whole 27 hours I was there, there was batches of ballots being ran through the tabulating machines numerous times, being counted 8 to 10 times. I watched this with my own eyes. I was there to assist with IT. These people on night shift, I had 4 people on night shift that I've known. One of them I've known for over 20 years. He approached me and said he had absolutely zero training whatsoever, contradicting 100% what Daniel Baxter claims, that they had so much training. He said they had zero. I watched. These people had no idea what they were doing. Okay. Also, the adjudication process, I witnessed numerous people walking up, claiming they were both Democrats, saying they were sitting together, judging ballots all night together, all day together. I witnessed it all. I was on the main stage with all of the city officials. Daniel Baxter was in on the whole thing, and I am under the impression 100% that at least 90% of those workers were all in on this. There was not a single ballot the whole night, the whole 27 hours I was there, that I saw that was for Donald Trump. Not one, not a single ballot. That is scary. There is no reason for that. Also, I'm gonna say that there was something going on at that Department of Elections, and it's clearly something that's very illegal that occurred there, and I am grateful to God that I did not go there.
Thank you. So, Vice Chair Lucido has a question.
Sure.
You were employed by whom to do what?
Okay, so I am a freelance IT worker.
Okay.
I was employed by PDS, P as in Paul, D as in David, S as in Sam, staffing, to assist with IT work for Dominion.
The software
TCF,
company.
Dominion Voting Systems, correct. I was with Nick Atanamagis. He's
my
manager.
I apologize, but this is very. Why did they feel that they needed to have assistance there for the software?
So a couple people have asked me the same question. I cannot answer that. These people were very secretive, and I will say that these people were very, very secretive and just really pushy. When I never did I ever admit I was a Republican to these people. The comments that they were making were disgusting.
Regardless of Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green, doesn't matter. I'm getting right to the heart of it. What was the instated purpose that the software company needed to have the assistance of support staff for IT?
I believe that it was because Nick and Samuel, that are permanent employees of Dominion, Nick is a part owner, that they had to be together on the stage, working together, so it looked like they had assistance with IT. Now, I was also not allowed to wear a badge or tell anybody who I was working with.
That's fine. So your opinion that it was them that needed to be there, you don't know anything that was contractual, you don't know if there was anything that was going glitchy, which means that there was...
Oh, I know of a lot of stuff that...
But my question is, factually, which
Yeah.
means today, as you sit here, is there anything you can tell us
Yes.
that was happening with the software where Nick and
Okay, so...
Samuel had to go assist in this?
Absolutely.
What was that?
Okay, so Samuel was missing for about 3 hours. When he returned, I said, "Where were you?" He said, "I was at the warehouse." I said, "Where's this warehouse?" And I said, "Is it an Amazon warehouse? I don't know. What kind of warehouse is it, right?" And he said, "We call it the Chicago warehouse." And I said, "Okay, so it's in Chicago?" Because they're from Colorado. I said, "So it's in Chicago?" And he said, "No, Melissa, it's in Detroit. We call it the Chicago warehouse." I said, "Okay," and I just walked away. But there was something very secretive that he was doing. There was also they said a big data loss right before they sent Samuel to this warehouse.
What time was that?
That was when Samuel went to the warehouse. That was approximately, it was in the afternoon. I believe it was around 2 or 3.
Is that on the 3rd or the 4th?
The 3rd.
Thank you. I'm okay. You have written testimony for the chair?
I have my
And the
second
committee?
affidavit, and I have what I was speaking off of just now.
Could you send that to us, please?
Absolutely.
Include your phone number if you could, in case
Absolutely.
we have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Before you go, please.
Sure.
I have a question.
Mhm.
When you testify about
See, this is absolutely wonderful. You there, even with your companies that you don't like or whatever, there's always people who have a conscience and who are good people just wanting a job. But it's the bad apples that are the problem that makes the whole company look rotten.
ballots being counted multiple times, what are you basing that analysis that they were counted multiple times?
Okay, so, I'm sorry, so the tabulating machines, when a ballot jams, it puts up an error. It'll say discard or recount. So when it puts up that error, when a jam occurs, the correct way to go about it is to discard the whole batch, take the ones that have already been tabulated, put them back into a pile, put the one that jammed on top, and then discard the whole thing, and then rescan them. They were not discarding. So they were just rescanning, counting ballots 8 to 10 times, just recounting them. They had absolutely no idea what they were doing.
So you're saying that they were literally opening up the box, taking the ballots back out of the box, and then sending them through again?
No, they
Okay.
were just taking,
I
so
wanna be
when a
clear on
ballot,
this.
okay, so when a ballot was, when the error came up on the PC in front of them, and it said that a jam occurred, I would go try, because it happened so many times in the 27-hour period. Each machine, it did it between 2 and 3 times an hour. So, because these were folded ballots, they're mail-in ballots. So, when it occurred, and then it threw up the error, discard, rescan, as I just stated, you are supposed to take the problem ballot that got jammed, put it on top of the whole pile, discard it, because that's why the option is there. If you do not discard it, it is recounting it. So they would take the ones that were, say ballot number 25 had an issue. You had already went through 24 ballots. So you're gonna put them back all in a pile, and you're just gonna rescan it? So it's counting those 24 again, instead of discarding those 24 and restarting.
So But that, I mean, that's what I was trying to ask. I mean, so they're literally taking, you're
Did I
saying.
answer correctly?
You're saying that they're taking ballots that already went through the machine, taking them and scanning them a second time.
That's absolutely what I said, yes.
So help me understand, because I haven't worked in AV counting
Okay.
center. I've been to my precinct, and when our ballots go into the tabulator, there's no access to them after they're accepted. I mean, they go into a sealed box.
Oh,
There's no
no,
access
these
to
ones,
them.
no, I've heard that too from other states that they do drop directly into a steel box. No, the steel boxes were behind them, which I could say a lot about that too, but I won't. But they were using those for barriers for the poll watchers so they couldn't get close, the steel boxes. But no, they were 100% in the counter's hands. This whole process, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. Nick and Samuel that worked for Dominion, they were on the stage. They had a contract employee, me, and another one that was from Texas. I have his name right here, Miles Smiley, 90-year-old man there to assist with IT work. He did not have any kind of background in IT and lived in Tennessee. So this man was just walking around aimlessly. You know, I was really the only one running around like crazy helping these people.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm not aware that it.
No, and they were responsible.
The machines I've been exposed to don't work that same way, so I was just checking in on that. Senator Tice.
So I'm trying to figure out the whole line of everything here. So you were with the equipment and the tabulators themselves?
Correct.
And they were going to send you to the Department of Elections?
Initially, that is where I was scheduled.
Tabulators at the Department of Elections?
That's the main question here, huh? Because I was trained on the tabulation and adjudication process, and how many people just came up before me stating that they saw people walking in and out of that Department of Elections with. As I stated, I was not supposed to even talk about this today,
And
but
then
I'm going
as
to.
they're scanning, they have a pile of them, they're putting them through a scanner, and the pile, once it's gone through the scanner, is still fully accessible to the person
Absolutely.
who's doing the count.
Absolutely.
Okay.
50 times if they wanted to.
Any other members have a question? Senator Lucido?
Yeah,
Senator.
this is interesting. You were trained to oversee tabulators. Is that what you told?
I was trained to assist with IT
In tabulators?
and the adjudication process, correct, sir?
Who trained you to use
Dominion.
your technique on the tabulators as it relates?
Dominion.
Dominion did. Was it their representatives that came to the TCF Center?
It was the owner of Dominion, Nick Economagnis, that came to the TCF Center, which is insane because he's like the top of the top with Dominion, which is he's missing.
When
He's
did
gone.
you meet with them at the TCF Center to get your training?
Okay, so my training was in Allen Park at the hotel they were staying at, right off of. It was November 2nd for 1 hour.
The day before the elections?
November 2nd, correct.
The day
sir.
before the election?
Yes, sir.
1 hour training. Was it done by video or was it done with a tabulator?
It was done with a tabulating machine and an adjudication machine in a conference room, and all we did was walk around it and nothing. We were given a binder, I have it right here, from Dominion about all their image cast, about how their software works. I have every Dominion employee here. I have the ones that were at
How many were with
the
you
warehouse.
in this? How many?
5 total.
5 total.
2 contract employees, 3 permanent employees of Dominion.
Wow.
Let me just say this, there was 1 permanent employee of Dominion. She went by the name of Danielle. Her real name was China, which she told me later. She's the one who told me Nick was a part owner, which was confirmed later on. She was acting very bizarre the whole night, would start crying, would start saying she couldn't handle being there.
Okay.
I saw the van come in at 4:30 full of ballots. That she left an hour before that, had someone pick her up.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, as long as we get her testimony, I would be intrigued to look at whatever you have
Absolutely.
through the chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank
Hold on. I have another question for you, ma'am. Please. Please. Vice Chair Irwin has a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I were to take a ballot, an absentee ballot, and I were to run that through a machine multiple times, and that ballot were to be counted multiple times, is that machine going to reflect those votes in the vote total at the end of the day? And is that ballot going to be recorded in the poll book 8 times or something? I mean, what's the...
Why do you think the poll books were so off?
Well, they were off a little bit less than they were in previous elections, so unless your allegation is that...
They were off, 100%.
Excuse me, members of the audience, please respect the
Sorry, I mean,
the
you asked me a
witness
question,
and-
what do you expect the answer to
Excuse
I was
me.
hoping for an answer, but I don't think I'm going to get one.
Excuse me. I couldn't hear what was going on because too many people talking over each other. So if you could please, Mr.
Sure.
Vice Chair, finish your line of questioning. I'd like to hear the end of it, please.
That was the end of it. There was just one question, which was that, you know, if this were to happen, it would show up in the tabulations being off. And we know...
They were
Do we
off.
know to what extent that they're off?
They were off.
Right, yeah, we know that.
So why are you asking? What are you asking me?
I'm trying to ask you if
Sir,
someone were to...
Go ahead.
If someone were to go and run the same ballot
Mhm.
over and over and over again, that would end up showing up as a massive discrepancy, right?
Did
and
I
we've
say
added up the
somebody took a ballot
discrepancies.
and ran it over and over and over again?
You
Just
did-
one ballot? Or a batch of 50?
Either way, I mean, the batch of 50 is going to be even
If you
more.
take one and you run it over and over and over again, yeah, people are going to notice that that one has been ran over and over. I had numerous challengers come up to me and say, "What's going on here?" One guy got
Is this like the 4th time they've asked this question?
thrown out because he took a picture of me.
Sure, I'm just wondering why the numbers at the end of the day aren't matching up with the stories that we're hearing. I'm trying to square that circle, and I know there's going to be an
Your
investigation
question
of
is
all of
as good
these
as everybody
allegations.
else's in here.
Yeah, there's
Why
going to be an
isn't it
investigation
why
of all
isn't it
this, and
matching
we're going to
up?
look into all
It's
these
not
details.
matching up. Everything that happened at that TCF center was fraud. Every single thing. Every avenue was
Excuse me.
taken to commit it.
Please. Appreciate your passion but he feels his question was answered. Appreciate that. I do have one additional follow-up.
Sure.
You mentioned observing ballots arriving
Yes, sir.
late. Do you have knowledge of where they came from?
I cannot say that for 100%. I do not know 100%.
Okay.
Do I assume where they came from? Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator McDonald, thank you.
I'll be brief. Your testimony was very compelling. So I just want to go back to what I asked Senator Colbeck. Where is the Department of Justice in this? I mean, without arresting it, I mean, are they even looking into it? I mean, your testimony is unbelievably compelling. So I'm just wondering, where are they?
Okay. Your question is as good as mine. So I did call the FBI on November 5th, and
Okay.
I spoke with a woman for at least 40 minutes. The phone disconnected. She had all my information. She never called me back. I had to call them back. I haven't been contacted back since.
Well, you would think that, did you contact anybody from the Trump campaign?
Oh, yeah. I've been
Wouldn't they
talking to
have a pipeline to the Department of Justice? Well, I mean,
I've been talking to attorneys. What I said just now regarding the Department of Elections and how I was scheduled to work there, that is coming out. That is coming out. That will be coming out next week. There's a lot coming. I was not even supposed to talk about that, but a lot of people mentioned it. So you know what? I'm going to tell you guys about it because this is fraud.
Okay.
And there was fraudulent activity occurring there.
thank you. Your testimony was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Next, we have James Danley.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter, and the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote, and none of the the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters, of which I saw several that day. Throughout the day, that's how they would override voters that were neither in the electronic poll book or the supplemental updated poll book.
Thank you.
I was under the impression that as a poll challenger, our primary responsibility is to make sure before a vote is cast that that ballot is either in the registered poll book, the computer book, or in the paper poll book, of which anytime as a challenger I tried to look at the ballot and then try to verify it, I would get 2 or 3 of the poll workers literally screaming at me to get back 6 feet. However, we did not know that that had been overturned the night before, which would have been helpful. But at no time were we able actually to physically see the ballot and then see it in the poll electronic book. The person opening the ballot would probably be sitting where Senator Theis is, and the electronic screen that we were supposed to be watching is basically to where the committee clerk is. Now, I don't know if you guys got binocular vision, but I don't. So I cannot look at a ballot over here, run down to this screen and be able to see it and verify that it is the same. I did address that with them multiple times, and they told me, sorry, I should have planned better. Plan better as to how? Needing binoculars? I mean, we as a poll challenger are supposed to verify the name, address on the ballot to the electronic poll book. And if it is not there, then it is supposed to be in a paper poll book, of which there was a significantly large poll worker. Anytime that I said that is not in the book, when she would scan it, it would not come up on the screen, then she would basically hover over this paper book, sometimes checking something, and other times we could see that they did not check it. And then they proceeded to manually enter these into the electronic poll book, where then they would come up on the screen. Many of these papers were not absent.
When we talk about the Dominion, it does run over servers. It runs through the internet, obviously. The question is, does the NSA have any of this information? They have all the means to track anything communications, this broadcast, your phone, your computers, wherever. You know, that's what they do, and they store it. There should be a way to retrieve that, and it just kind of came to me today, listening to some of these testimonies. So hopefully the NSA director is looking into this kind of thing.
Ballot, the yellow envelope, the standard ballot. Some of them were on printed paper. Some of them were in white envelopes. Some of them had multiple papers attached to them. So then they would manually enter them into the electronic book.
So 2 of the main observations that I witnessed at the TCF Center on both the 3rd and the 4th when I was there, when I got down there on the morning of the 4th, I went back for an additional day because I witnessed so many irregularities when I was there on Election Day on the 3rd. Immediately upon walking in, I ran into Randy Bishop, and Randy owns radio stations. He's very IT savvy. He said, Brian, I was here all night. What's going on here is unbelievable. He said, let me show you something right now before I leave. So he walked me over to the high-speed scanners and tabulators, and he said, see all these Ethernet lines running out of the tabulators? They're all bundled together as they accumulate, and then they're all connected to these routers, and then they all go to the main computer. He said, these are all hooked into the internet, and that is illegal, and it should not be happening because it opens them up to hacking. So I was aware of that immediately.
What time of the morning was it when you saw this come in? Or what time of the evening was it?
Like I said, 3-ish, 4 in that window.
In the afternoon?
No. I was there from
3 or 4 in the morning.
I was there at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
They were in mail sleeves, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody have any earmarkings of who they were carrying these ballots? Were they carrying them? Were they on a dolly?
Yeah, they were on a dolly. Yeah, they were on a dolly. Do I know who they were? Absolutely not. But there were people that were doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lucido. Senator Santana.
Was there any particular reason you didn't ask for a supervisor to question, the ballot just coming in on a dolly or?
Well, I didn't figure I needed to because the lead counsel that was supposed to be there was taking tally, and I was there standing right next to him. So I figured he was kind of the person that was overseeing the whole night. But that's what we were told. No, we were talking directly about why are these coming in. We all thought it was interesting that these ballots were coming in so late. What was his response? We were trying to take. Sorry.
What was his response, sir?
We were taking count, and we were his exact response I couldn't recall, but we were definitely perplexed that these were coming in so late, as well as they were being put out to be counted.
What time of the morning was it when you saw this come in? Or what time of the evening was it?
Like I said, 3-ish, 4 in that window.
In the afternoon?
No. I was there from
3 or 4 in the morning.
I was there at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
They were in male sleeves, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody have any earmarkings of who they were carrying these ballots? Were they carrying them? Were they on a dolly?
Yeah, they were on a dolly. Yeah, they were on a dolly. Do I know who they were? Absolutely not. But they were people that were.
I am an unaffiliated Michigan voter who was trained by the GOP to be a poll challenger on Wednesday, November 4th, beginning in the late morning until around 8 p.m. because I was told that they needed help. They were understaffed. I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 130 and 160.
Next, we have this name that I'm doing very poorly with, Hema. Hema, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. After her will be Melissa Carone and James Danley. Hema, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. Can you tell me how to say your last name correctly?
Kolanagi Reddy.
So now everybody else can know.
The moment I saw you holding on to that card, I'm like, that's me. That's got to be me.
Well, you have 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. This is my first time doing this as a poll challenger at TCF. As an immigrant to this country, as you can tell, we had great respect for America, the elections here. We always thought it has a lot of integrity, whereas the countries we come from, a lot of things happen. But all of that changed the day I went there. Like I was at TCF on both the days, 3rd and the 4th. 3rd was pretty much the same monotonous stuff going on, nothing much to note, other than occasional ballot challenging. But the next day is where I noticed a lot of issues. There was a group of people who were like agitators who were trying to get GOP people in trouble. And from my skin color, everybody assumes that I'm a Democrat. And so they just kind of come to me. And one of the ladies was thinking that let's get these MFs out. And I'm like, MFs who? Like, because she thought I was a Democrat. Then when I pulled out my tag, she looked at me and she's like, you're on the wrong side. I'm like, how can you say I'm on the wrong side? I pick whoever I want, right? Because this is a free country. But then I noticed that they were going and getting all the white male Republicans out by, just kind of sheer intimidation, just saying, oh, you're mask flipped, you're going to get people killed, like you heard from so many other people. And then what I did was I got trained by both the MIGOP and Election Integrity Fund. So I went to Tim Griffin of Election Integrity Fund and I said, can I have my nonpartisan credentials? And then when I got that badge on, everything changed. Like people just looked at me differently. I was looked at with a lot of hostility when I had the GOP tag, and now that I have a nonpartisan tag, I was respected at the counting boards. I was respected by the Democrats and the ACLU. And in fact, I was able to even help some of the GOP people from being escorted out by putting myself there and asking why they were even being escorted out and arguing with these people. But the whole environment was so hostile and condescending. And a lot of people have talked about the ballots that were not in the poll book or the system. And I was at a table which had a full stack of this file which said not in EPB/S, which is poll book or system. They were scanning and manually entering them, and the signatures on those sleeves were exactly alike, like a bar graph. And then they were sequential ballot numbers. They started from 2232, and sequence was something that threw me off. I'm like, how does that happen? And most of those people were from the guarded street, and they were being entered manually. So those were the observations that I had. I had all the details, the last names and everything. I gave the affidavit to the Election Integrity Fund. The thing that bothered me was that when every time a GOP challenger was being escorted out, all the poll workers, Democrats, and everybody else were cheering, and that was very disappointing because these people were just doing their job. They were not attacking, they were not there with guns, they were just volunteering their time, and they were treated with utmost disrespect.
Thank you for your time, your testimony. Could you briefly go back to just a few seconds ago? You mentioned how you saw some ballots that were sequential, and then you described them somehow, and I missed the phrase that you used. Where they came from, I think you mentioned?
Yeah, it was from Goddard Street in Wayne County.
Garden Street, okay.
Yeah, and they all had sequential ballot numbers, and they were being manually fed into the system.
Okay, thank you. Any other members have a question? Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Is going to do what we say tonight. And might I add, I was a U.S. Taxpayer Party of Michigan candidate at that time, sir. I observed stations where election workers were working on scanned ballots that had issues that needed to be manually corrected. I believe some of these workers were changing votes that had been cast for Donald Trump other than Republican candidates. I observed ballots with cursive writing notes at the top right-hand corner. I observed a lot of them. Let's say count maybe about 100 of them or more. I also observed these ballots did not have ballot codes on them. The one, you tear at the top, no ballot code numbers. At approximately 4:03 a.m., a poll worker announced 50 boxes of ballots coming in. Election workers loudly cheered, woo! Why? Did they know that they were for Biden? Was it a Biden dump? We don't know, huh? About 4:50 a.m., I witnessed a man spraying a chemical inside the ballot. It could have been air, but I also saw him put whiteout tape up inside of there, and he was walking around with this whiteout tape during the whole night. I have witnesses. If you need to call on them, their name is Cheryl Constantino, Linda Sawyer, Judy Jump, Debbie Swaff, and Marlene Benser, including myself, our TCF bomber. I can't get all into this because I probably got a few more seconds, but let me tell you, it was voter fraud at its finest, pure and calculated fraud. And I wouldn't be surprised if people up here was involved. But this young man right here, Senator McDaniel, Donald, I got to give you kudos. I see you're interested in this. And Senator Thies, I have to give you kudos because I see you're really paying attention. I wish Senator Lucido was here because I say he's paying attention. And now I think you will pay attention. And I plead the blood of Jesus over this fraud. And that everybody that was part of it and know about it will be convicted in their soul and their spirit. They won't sleep, they won't eat until they come right. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Followed by Michael Haynes. Hi, Dr. Tarver.
Thank you,
Welcome to the
Senators.
committee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Linda Lee Tarver. I'm a Michigan voter, former Michigan Civil Rights Commissioner, a retired state employee, and a Republican activist. I'm a public servant under 5 secretaries of state, including Richard Austin, Candace Miller, Terry Lynn Land, Ruth Johnson, and I was delighted to retire under the current Secretary of State. I have been under 7 years under Secretary of State Ruth Johnson. In that role, I was the Community Affairs Director and Election Integrity Liaison. I assisted in preparing cases for referral to Attorney General Bill Schuette to prosecute for voter fraud. Ballot harvesting in Detroit, Flint, and Pontiac has been going on for decades. It's a misdemeanor to give your ballot to anyone not allowed by law to receive it, and it's a felony to take that ballot. People have been prosecuted in Michigan over the years as a result. Ballot stuffing, ballot curing, and complete fraud in the issuance, handling, and processing of ballots has not been addressed, and no election after 2020 should be considered fair unless we get this right this year. The complete hate, disdain, and apathy for Republican poll challengers is but one way of how elections are stolen in Michigan. Before COVID-19, and I'm talking to the Democrat in the House, And in every election in the last 25 years, Republican poll challengers were removed by the police, especially in Pontiac. MCL 168.733 says, the election inspectors and other election officials on duty shall protect a challenger in the discharge of his or her duties. Shall protect is not an option. Shall protect. It is never done in the urban areas. Never, never, never in the urban areas. In the 34 years I've been working for the state of Michigan, and certainly not the 29 years I've been working at the Secretary of State. It also says in subsection 4, a person shall not threaten or intimidate a challenger while performing an activity allowed. You shall not threaten or intimidate. It is a misdemeanor for what they have done, these inspectors, to continue to intimidate and throw out Republican poll challengers. It has been going on too long. 71% of Detroit precincts, our largest city, cannot be recounted. As always expressed as minor clerical errors, these are not minor. There are touch points in the process for these ballots to be, and the accounting to be done, those ballots to be open. In order for this fraud to be corrected, we need a complete audit. You need to have optics on it. This has always been done in communities of color. It needs to stop. Enforce the laws and ensure, bring in independent inspectors. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Tarver. Any members have a question? Senator Tice.
Thank you, Dr. Tarver. I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate your testimony. Also very compelling. Do you have, when you speak about an audit and a complete audit, what would you see as the appropriate type of audit? Would it be a forensic audit? Would it be a hand recount of ballots? What would you like to see done?
71% of Detroit cannot be recounted, which means that the boxes that the ballots are in cannot be opened. 71% is egregious, and it happens in these communities of color. So if you cannot recount it because of a, quote, clerical error, according to Secretary Benson, these are not clerical errors. These ballots are hidden in. You can hide them in there until you're able to open them. There are processes that have been allowed so that when you cannot balance your precinct, you can go to a counting board or a board to evaluate them. At that time, those errors are supposed to be fixed, and they can open up the ballots. The only way to open up the ballots right now to get your ideas on it is for you to do a complete forensic audit that needs to be done to open up those ballots. Because a recount is only going to get you 71% of the ticker tape that says these are the numbers, and they're bad ballots inside. You cannot look at the ballots if you do a recount. You need an audit in order to do a forensic audit to look at those ballots. Some absentee ballots that were coming in were not even folded. How do you have a pristine, flat ballot without being folded if it was an absentee ballot? And therein lies some of the problems. And once it goes into the machine multiple times, you cannot open up the case. If you put the wrong number on the seal, you can't open it up. If you put in, if it doesn't balance, you can't open it up. And so there's problems with what's going on. We need to open up those ballots for the integrity, because we cannot move forward in any further election.
Can I ask a follow-up? So I am curious, because I understand that a lot of them didn't balance. What is the appropriate process once you get done with the election and you've done the ballot count and you realize that they're not balancing? What would the appropriate process be right then?
The precinct inspectors or the precinct captain, who is supposed to be trained, are supposed to contact the clerk's office if there's any problem with balancing. You're supposed to know and have your hand on how many provisional ballots, how many spoiled ballots, where are the missing ballots, what's going on. You're supposed to take care of it at the precinct level. and then close your precinct. But if some reason you're not able to, there's a counting board where you take your ballots to turn them in to say, I testify that I did this, and I've got my paperwork, I've got my poll books, I've got the notes written down in the poll books or in our electronic poll books. And that counting board is supposed to say, you're not in balance. Let us open up that container and make sure those poll books are we can look at the ballots, we physically can look at them. But in these urban areas, they're lazy, and they're not taking this, the civic right very seriously, or their duties very seriously. They take an oath when they do as a precinct inspector. They are not taking it seriously and have not for years. And the apathy toward the official duties here has become egregious, because once they decide not to balance that precinct, then it goes through and you have the hot mess that you had, where you have these canvassers, board of canvassers, 4 people that is supposed to amend that hot mess. Flint has never been able to balance. Never been able to balance, and there's touch points across where they have the ability to open that up, to do a quote honest open of the ballot itself, the container itself. If you're not able to open that container up, which after it leaves the counting board, you're not able to do it unless you get a court order or an audit. And no one has been brave enough to do it. 71% of Detroit cannot be recounted. We have nothing. And when we did a recount before, we saw some of the most egregious things when we looked through and did recounts before in Detroit. There's some things in there that should never have been in there. And that is what I'm telling you about when you're able to open up those ballot boxes. But it is not going to be at the Detroit canvasser level, and certainly not at the Michigan State Board of Canvasser level.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tice. Vice Chair Irwin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions for you
Sure.
that I'm going to ask you based on the fact that you've been around for a while. You've been an activist. You've been where you work for the Secretary of State's office. So that's why I'm going to ask you these things. I think my first question is, are you aware that there are audits done on past elections, and in any of your official or unofficial capacities, did you ever have the opportunity or cause to review those audits that looked into things like, dead voters and all that kind of stuff
Yes.
that we've done in the past?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find that the answers to those questions were that, in fact, these were clerical errors in previous audits that have been done by the Legislative Auditor General and been before this committee in the recent years?
So I've worked with Chris Thomas for years, and I've submitted some illegal stuff that I felt was illegal to them to investigate, and they were investigated. How they remedied it was not according to what I felt was necessary. There have been clerical errors, if you call it clerical. The law concerning your ability to be a precinct inspector, a poll worker, is that you have to have a sufficient clerical acumen in order to perform the duties, which means you should be able to read and write and add and subtract. And you should be able to perform the duties without any inhibitions. We know that there are over 500 precincts in Detroit, and many of the people who will come and get trained, some of them will not show up. But the ones that do show up, they are not given sufficient training on how to legally perform the duties that they have. However, if they are told that the challenger is the enemy, this person standing behind you is the enemy, and they have not been told that the person behind you must be protected, you will not be able to address some of the oversight, laziness, ignorance of the law, ignorance of the process, and lack of training. And so one of the ways that ballots are the election fraud occurs is when you have workers who are not properly trained. And that's where we are finding is lack of training. They're in a hurry. They're not sure what to do. But those clerical errors are mixed with clerical errors, but a lot of them are considered fraud. I would have referred all of them to the Attorney General if it were me. But Chris Thomas and others decided not to. They tried to remedy those things as best they can, but unless you put the full faith into the law and start prosecuting people, we will continue to see what we've been seeing. 71% of Detroit cannot be recounted. And I would not want to run on a Detroit city nothing at all. I would not want to run in the city of Detroit knowing that there have been, quote, clerical errors, that some of them are illegal. There are ballot curing problems. We have seen people walk into the clerk's office in Detroit with a stack of 75 ballots. Janice Winfrey is standing next. Ballots. If you don't compare the signatures, you toss the signature out. You don't compare the signatures, you're supposed to. It's in the law. We are not following the law, and we are not following it in every election. And the larger the jurisdiction, which are people of color, people who look like me, the more fraud that can be inserted into stealing an election. And that is a problem, and we need to stop it.
Okay, I almost am afraid to ask another question.
Ask the second question.
You've read the audits, you've seen them. We both read the audits.
They know
We
me.
went from several
We both read the audits. I just
I'm
keep
very
putting it out
passionate.
there that, in fact,
Yes,
it is
thank
part of Michigan election law that we
Yes.
have audits, and those audits have been done in recent elections, and they'll be done after this one as well. And, you know, I just want to put that out there. And then also, you know, one of the things
You're
you said,
talking
I
about a
really agree with you.
post-election.
That's
Yes,
right.
but
That's what the law says.
they're insufficient.
I
For,
appreciate your
they're
position.
insufficient for what the purpose is. I'm asking for a forensic audit of the election itself, looking for the fraud and illegal votes.
Yes, and I'm wondering why the Trump campaign didn't want to do a recount, which would have been the normal process.
Why,
But
why
let
would
me
you
ask my second
recount
question.
71% of the votes cannot be recounted?
You know what, that's a problem. I want to agree
I'm
with you
just
on
telling
that.
you,
I'm
why
trying to build
waste,
up to agreeing with you.
why waste your money and time? It costs money to do a recount. Why waste your money when 71% of the votes that you need to look at physically cannot be even seen?
Okay.
That
And that builds up to my next
29%,
question.
I'm not paying $2 million or $4 million for 29% of the ballots that can be counted, because the rest of them cannot be counted.
That's one of the reasons why I voted against the changes to the recall law that made it so onerous and difficult for people who wanted to look into these
Open
issues.
up
However,
the ballots.
The
Yes, sir.
issue that you mentioned that I just want to highlight for the committee, because I really agree with you on this, is that, you know, when you have a situation where there's a discrepancy at that precinct, those precincts should be recountable, and we need to find a way to make that so. And
If any of these people are serious about what they say, do it. Say, we don't need no more hearings. We're going to go forth. We're going to have a recall. We're going to have an audit. Excuse me, audit. You know, it shouldn't be that difficult. If they agree with this, what's the point of wasting more money and time talking to people and just do it?
I think that what you're going to find here in Lansing is that there are a whole lot of Democrats who are going to agree with that. We want these ballots to be looked at. We want elections to be run in a safe and secure manner. But the problem is that this legislature has been controlled by Republicans since the 80s. The state Senate has been controlled by the Republicans since the 80s. And so my question to you is, after the 2016 election, when we saw the problems that we saw that you just hinted at, when we had agreement apparently between a lot of folks about the fact that these precincts should be recountable, why did we see no changes in the law to address any of these issues while we had a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate?
So I'd be happy to answer that question. That's a very simple one. We have sufficient laws on the books. So my brothers and sisters in the Republican GOP has done their due diligence to pass laws, make laws. The enforceability of the laws, however, because in Grand Traverse County, we're not having this problem. In certain counties, that Van Buren County, we're not having this hot mess problems that we have in Pontiac and in Flint and in Detroit. We don't have that. So if you want Republicans to pass more laws, why don't the Democrats in their cities enforce the doggone election laws so that that we can have fair and just elections? Because I just gave you the law. It's a felony for me to give my friend, next door neighbor, my ballot. It's a misdemeanor for me to give it to them, and it's a felony for them to turn it in. A felony. It is not enforced. And we have situations in the inner cities and these Democrat-controlled areas, because that's what we're talking about. Democrat-controlled areas cannot seem to balance their elections. And because they have been habitual violators of the inability to balance their election because of either ignorance, apathy, lack of leadership, or lack of caring about their election integrity, because if you add more laws to the books, you still have people who will not follow the law. And if you don't enforce the law, if you don't bring in Republicans to say, I am going to be a poll worker, if you need 5 Republicans in the building, make sure 5 workers are. Contact the Michigan Republican Party. Ask them for 5 people or 25 people or 200 people to work it. And then when the challengers come in, you protect them. You don't put them out.
Right.
You don't call the police on them. You're supposed to protect them according to the law. If you follow the law in the urban Democratic controlled areas, then we would not be here today. I certainly wouldn't be here. But in 25 years that I've been monitoring elections, working with the Secretary of State, the last 8 doing election integrity, it's been a hot mess in the same Democrat-controlled areas.
Yeah.
We don't need any more laws. We need to enforce the laws, and we need to open up the doggone ballot boxes.
Now, again, if Democrats are so open to reform of our election laws and districts or whatever, what they were expressing, why can't they just say, Senator so-and-so, a Republican, let's get together, let's make a bill. There you go. Compromise. They just want to complain. That's all they want to do.
But we are agreed that we need to change the laws on
Thank you.
recounting precincts. We do
Thank
agree
you.
that we need to change the law on recounting precincts, right?
Pardon me?
We should change the law on recounting precincts. That was the
We're
subject of my
not
question.
changing
I mean,
the
you went
laws
on a
for
nice political
recounting.
screed, but the
No,
question
no.
was about that specific law, allowing the recounting of imbalanced precincts.
No, we're not.
Let's change that law.
We're not trying to talk about recounting for imbalanced precinct. The balancing of the precinct can come at the counting board level. You think that the ballots come out and then all of a sudden it's given in and locked up in a box. It is not. Once it leaves the precinct, it goes to a counting board. They have the full authority to open up that ballot box because it's not balancing. If the seal is broken, if this is broken, they can reseal it at the counting board. There is a law with the counting board, and it's lazy in the inner cities of color, of people who look like me, are not doing their job. And it needs to be done so that we can count 100% of the precincts instead of 29%. That's what needs to be done, is to make sure people are doing their job. You won't get that in an audit. What you will get in the current fake audits that we've been having and these fluff audits that we've had right now, you will get, well, these can't be recounted, so okay, so we can't do that. Here's what we can. You will get an audit of the 29% in Detroit that can be recounted. That's all you're going to get. Because we need to see the 71% of the fraud that has been locked up and will be destroyed after so many years. That's what we need to see.
Thank you,
I'll take any other questions.
Thank you, Senator Irwin. Senator Lucido.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Dr. Tarver. I got to tell you, I can't agree with you more. My whole problem is sitting in this chair today and leaving the Senate to go prosecute those crimes. Why was it when the Secretary of State, which you were there how many years?
I've been with the Secretary of State 29 years.
Almost 30 years. We've been in this room here over 6.5 hours, and the irony is it's about the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
If the people are doing their jobs and the integrity of the vote is being respected, we wouldn't be in here today.
That's right.
Two is 71% can't be counted because
Of fraud or apathy or incompetence or clerical error or all of the above.
So we did some testimony, and the chairman was gracious enough to bring in 3 separate identifiable clerks from 3 separate identifiable counties. We asked these questions. How many of the ballots weren't signed that you didn't count? How many didn't look like signatures? I mean, we went into the deep dive because there's so many people that are so disenchanted. I don't want them to give up on the vote. I want them to remember that people sacrificed their lives for these amendments.
People who look like me died to get the right to vote, and I'm telling you, it is sacred.
And this
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I learned something new today. I thought it was a legislative deal, but if you have to do your job, if it goes to a certain place, yes, they do have to do what they're told to do and do it right and lawfully.
discriminatory practices with women not getting the same right that men years ago. If it's a felony, it's a felony. If it's got to be prosecuted, it should be. Otherwise, the whole fabric of this entire nation falls apart. Discrepancies in the precincts, I get it, to my colleague up here. If you're going to have discrepancies, as if it's an easy fix. But I'm not hearing things from all over the state. I'm hearing them in segregated areas, and I think you are targeting these areas by saying people are either inept to do their job or they don't care about doing the job.
They have either been instructed not to care or have been allowed to, over the decades, not to be held accountable for the lack of accountability in the sacred vote. When you have gone so many years, people do not want to be called racist.
Right.
And if you're going into urban areas, in particular Detroit, you're hearing, why are you trying to disenfranchise the black vote?
Yeah.
You are racist, racist, racist.
I think this, and I
But
would-
that has been the mantra, to allow for the 71% of no accountability when we have safeguards in place to ensure the balancing of the precinct and the seal that is not broken.
Dr. Tarver, those ballots are not of color.
I agree.
They are one color.
That's right.
And they go in and they have parties on them. And the disrespect that I've heard throughout the process in Wayne County, in Detroit, only leads me to believe that even an audit process, and I got to ask this question, if 71% can't be counted,
Cannot.
the audit process to spend the kind of millions of dollars that it would take, and I really don't even know what CPA firm or what firm would do an audit. Have you, in your almost 30 years with the Secretary of State, could you identify a firm that specializes in election audits?
We'd have to bring in the federal government. The forensic audit that is needed is not going to be what has been done in order to open up those ballot boxes, which we need to.
So
that's where we need to open up the ballot boxes.
So if this has never been done, in the history of this country, I'm asking this question: does the legislature cumulatively or collaboratively work on a standard that would be the audit process? Because the next thing I see is that there's going to be debate over the audit process.
I don't see the legislative body, this body, passing any law to change anything, because must balance is not going to force Detroit to balance. Must balance is not going to force Inez Brown, the city clerk of Flint, to balance. Must balance, she has never been able to balance since she's been an election clerk there. So she's never balanced. Pontiac won't balance. There's a few other places, mostly urban areas, that will not balance. And they don't have to be as large as Detroit. They just won't balance. And if we don't have a mechanism in place, because once you pass a law that says we're going to do this, it is not going to be heeded, because then if you try to enforce it in the urban areas, you'll be considered a racist. You'll be considered disenfranchising the voters. You're just trying to check on us. Oh, black folks from Detroit need to have our whatever 71%. If you can't count it, you can't count it. And this Secretary of State will call it small clerical errors. And that is the mantra and talking points that should not be done. This is not a small clerical error. If there is fraud in those 71%, they need to be opened. Open the boxes. And that's going to be the new mantra, hashtag open the boxes.
Mr. Chair, I just have we're going to get down and drill down on this, but the reality is I don't think my colleagues on the opposite side of the aisle feel any differently. I think, to Senator Irwin's point, all of us want the integrity, the respect, and trust. Otherwise, we sitting here as lawmakers make no sense if the vote doesn't count and it doesn't accurately reflect what's going on. But
that was certainly the sentiment expressed at our joint committee's first meetings by all members.
And at the end of the day, though, if we don't have the capability of resurrecting this wrong to accurately reflect what the vote is, how did it get so disenfranchised that we all are sitting here today hearing ballots brought in at 4 in the morning? I must have heard it 20 times, maybe more. Ballots that were going through and counted 8 times. Ballots that weren't signed going through, or the signature appeared, or the date, 1900.
Oh, yeah. The constitutional issue, and the constitutional issue that the president is arguing, which is a valid one, is that the equal protection under the law, it's required under the Constitution. And this is the president's argument. Me in Lansing, Michigan, if I sent in my absentee ballot, I didn't sign it, or I voted straight Republican and straight Democrat, my partisan section should be spoiled because they should not be curing it. And that is being cured. If I did not do what I needed to do, my ballot won't count. But if the same ballot was sent in Detroit, it is cured, which is fake, trying to interpret the results, and it is accepted if I don't sign it in Detroit. And that's where in Lansing, my ballot won't count. In Detroit, it will, and I should be able to have equal protection under the law. That is the constitutional amendment. That's the constitutional argument that our president is making. That is what you should be looking at. Are we treated fairly, regardless of where we live in Michigan? Will my vote count, regardless?
You used the word cure.
Cure.
In the law,
yes.
If you look at the legal definition of cure, what do you mean by the definition of cure?
So the curing of the ballots is if you're not able to, you've got an absentee ballot and it is kicked out. Because if you're sitting there, your ballot is kicked out if there's an overvote or if there's an undervote. You can, if there's an overvote, let's say it says vote for not more than 2 and you vote for 3. It's an overvote. It'll kick it back out if you're at the precinct.
And you have a chance to
and
cure
you have
the
a
ballot.
chance to cure your own ballot.
To redress the wrong
Correct.
on the ballot.
But if it's an absentee ballot,
Yes,
it is not supposed to be cured.
it is not supposed
No.
to be. It's supposed
Your
to be.
partisan
It's a spoiled
section,
ballot.
It's no, that section is spoiled. It's not countable. But the nonpartisan section that you did correctly is supposed to be counted.
So let's go by example. I vote straight ticket, Democratic.
And Republican.
Or I vote straight ticket, but when I get to the judges, choose not but one, because they're nonpartisan,
Right.
that part.
Right.
I choose 2.
Mhm.
What happens to the ballot?
So your ballot counts, but if it's an absentee, that particular judge is not, it's not counted.
Nobody gets a vote.
Correct.
Okay. At the end of the day, I sat here as a legislator for over 6 years now. I sit in this chair and I wonder why the Secretary of State, if you have to request a ballot in a primary for Democrat or Republican, why they just can't make 2 ballots all Republican, all Democrat, and send them out. So it can't get spoiled. You can't make a mistake. You can't go across the center line.
That is what occurs during the primary. So each group, Republicans and Democrats, decide who's going to be on their ballot.
But if you don't want the ballot to be spoiled and not counted, and you want your vote to count.
You can split your ticket in the general.
But I'm
Correct.
saying in the primary, do you see why, if I'm asking for a Democratic or Republican?
No, I would agree with you. I would
Because now
agree
it's
with
an
you.
impossibility to spoil that ballot.
That's only in the primary.
Primary, right. But that brings the next level of seekers to move to the general. And if the ballot was spoiled enough times, that seeker may not get the opportunity to serve.
I agree.
Okay, one more thing, and then I'm going to call it, because
I
I
hope
know
so.
it's been... No, but you know what? I'm tired of sitting here and trying to defend
I'm just giving you a hard time, Mr. Vice Chair.
Just go ahead. Give him all the time he wants here.
71% not being able to be counted, which means
71% not being able to be recounted.
do we ever get the opportunity to find out what the hell happened?
You will never know what is actually in that box, in the ballot box. You're not able to determine if those who are, those ballots are even duplicated. If you see people sending in 3 or 4
got it.
times,
I
you don't
understand.
know.
So that statement of 71% has been stated out in the public. You are aware, being with the Secretary of State's office, 29 years, that's a long time. At the end of the day, does this give rise for the Attorney General to make an investigation and inquiry why 71% of that vote went that way?
Yes, I would believe that, again, if there is impropriety, that is where the Attorney General can investigate. I've prepared referrals to Bill Schuette for election crimes. We've had people in Michigan prosecuted for voting in Michigan and at their summer home in Florida. We've had people who were not here legally, non-citizens, vote in Michigan. We've had tons of people who voted twice, voted in person and absentee, and they're doing it in large clusters in these urban areas. It is a problem in the Democrat-controlled areas. It's not the problem with the laws on the books. It's a problem in the Democrat-controlled areas, and the laws need to be enforced. And if they cannot be enforced, they need to at least bring in the federal government to do an oversight and administer elections in these urban areas, which have been routinely unable to be balancing at the end of the day. We have too many touch points where those things can be balanced, but we are not. We have an apathy or just a corrupt, either apathy or a corrupt system, and for some reason we have no appetite with this governor, Secretary of State, or the Attorney General to do anything about it at this point. This is too egregious and too much fraud that it should have been already investigated.
Well, we have seen prosecutions in election fraud, such as Southfield. There is selective prosecution in certain areas. At the end of the day, why wouldn't this state want the ability to make the inquiry? Is it because the case isn't delivered perfectly? I mean, these are credible people that are testifying here, including yourself.
It is COVID, before COVID, and even with COVID. COVID does not change the law. The law was not changed to accommodate COVID. The people who are the challengers are required and need to be protected in order to see the process. They can challenge the voter, they can challenge the precinct inspector, and they can challenge the entire process. That's what the law says, 168.733. That's what the law says. But we also have laws on the books that allow for people, the public, to view. And we also have laws on the books, but if they're not going to be enforced because it's an urban area, we have laws that says that people who should need assistance should be able to have assistance in voting. And some of these precincts did not have handicap and disability procedures there. Voting by mail disenfranchises a lot of people who cannot read and write, who need assistance, who need some assistance in the voting process with the machines that will read the ballot to them. And so this is the problem where we're not allowing, we've used as an excuse COVID, but we are not allowing what needs to be done to be done. Just like the children who are not in school with disabilities are not getting the special care that they need, neither did the voters here in Michigan. They did not get the special assistance that is required by law. These special assistance, even those people who are blind, people who need Braille, people who need special audio equipment, we have those at every precinct, or it should be at every precinct, so that the people of Michigan will have everything they need to vote, and that is not being done in the urban areas. And people don't want to touch Detroit, but it is not a sacred cow anymore. It is looking more like a cow, but not a sacred cow anymore.
I want to say thank you to the chairman. I've gone way over my time.
So have I. I'm
and
sorry.
You know what, though? These questions need to be answered
Okay.
because all of us are here because of this.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the
Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you.
I do want to say, I wish that we had the opportunity to bring you in on a time. I mean, the agenda today was really supposed to focus on TCF, but out of respect to you and your experience, have allowed us to go off. But we may need you to come back when we
Call
get
me anytime. You
more
know where I'm at.
into that specific subject matter. So
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was just amazing today. And there's more. But first, I'm going to go to a commercial. If you're right back.
This just in! The global officials that can help all, also known as Got You, have now banned all boogieing and boogie-related movements worldwide. Public safety is the main concern, they say, and people are reminded that boogieing is contagious. Anyone caught boogieing will be dealt with in the harshest terms police have reported. More at 11.
Sometimes this world can get you down. There's just one thing you can do. You gotta get back up and shake it all around. No one's gonna tell me how I'm gonna boogie. Come on, everybody boogie bumper tonight. No one's gonna tell me how I'm gonna boogie. Come on, everybody boogie bumper tonight. No one's gonna tell me how to boogie. Come on, everybody boogie bumper tonight.
Most weeknights, join my good self UK Neil over at DLive for the Great Awakening show. That's over on DLive at dlive.tv/UK Neil. Get yourself out of that matrix and get over to the Great Awakening.
Join me, Rusty the Iceman, Sunday nights, 10:30 Standard Eastern Time on Twitch, Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook. And I'm back. Yeah, I gotta switch my commercials because there's a couple new ones. Plus, I gotta add my co-host on Sunday nights, Beth Duffy. I just haven't got to that yet. I will. I'll have to get me a new one, and I'll have to send that out as well. So, amongst all that wonderful testimony, I mean, it's very informative. It's a lot of things we did not know firsthand. We've kind of heard about it, but it's different when you hear them actually talk about it under oath, because there's no way they're going to lie. And here is one of the most, I think, one of the most intriguing as well, besides the last one, is the whistleblower from, he says he's from the Dominion company. I have not seen this. I just found it. And there was also a couple of very interesting announcements today, which we'll take a look at. Let's see. Yep, are you sure I got you the right one?
It's something that's been weighing on my mind and something that I feel needs to be said, so I'm going to say it. And I'm just asking that people be respectful of my family. I just had a new baby. And I'm just trying to be as open and honest as I possibly can be with where I see potential problems with how our state handled mail-in voting. The machine issues that are being looked at by Rudy Giuliani, I think they're barking up the wrong tree there. There's, they're going to go through that and they're going to find that the machine code is pretty solid, in my opinion. Could things have been manipulated? Possibly, but the reality of the situation is we've been through many elections in the past, and in fact, even a Democratic Political Action Group came through in 2016. They were angry about Donald Trump winning that election, and
I thought this was interesting. This is what it's titled. It was, I cannot confirm or deny, he does work for them. This is for them.
Came to our customers and they said, hey, we want to do a total recount of the entire state. So we want all of your ballot images, and we want to compare them to the results that came out of the machines. Well, it came to find out that the ballot images and the machines were pretty much dead on. There's just no financial incentive for a company like Dominion or a company like Election Source to be involved with that type of.
But as I reported, there's this Combe guy, Eric Combe. He is the security for the Dominion company, and he definitely shows his hatred for the president and said, just like Page, he's not going to win. I'll make sure of it.
Widespread fraud. I mean, you're risking your entire company to do that. So that's just not happening, in my opinion. And if it is, it would be a huge surprise to me. It should be looked into for sure, because there's always bad actors. There could be bad actors at a company. But as far as I can tell, that route is barking up the wrong tree. But there is, unfortunately, because of the way that we did mass mail-out voting, there is a potential for a huge vulnerability in the election system. And that vulnerability is this, right here. All of the ballots that come out of the machines, when they are made, are digital PDF files. They are unsecured. There is no chain of custody when it comes to them, and what I mean by that is when they are created on the county's software, the EMS software, they are sent out to the printer. They are sent out to our company as a company that needs to create tests for the machines. It's just a logical fact that we need that ballot in order to create those tests. So, back before we did mass mail-in voting, nobody thought twice about shipping those
Agreed, Humi.
digital ballots to the appropriate sources. Nobody really felt like there needed to be a secure chain of command because, what are you going to do with the digital ballot? Every precinct gets an allotment of ballots on election day, and people come in and they vote in person, and there's a certain amount of registered absentee voters, and it's.
But we have heard testimony that the PDF has been gone. All these, shoot, why am I getting blinked here? Why do we find out there's been no chain of custody in quite a few of these places?
Minuscule. But the problem is the way we very sloppily handled mass mail-out voting. We just kind of sent them around, and there wasn't a whole lot of accurate tracking as to where those ballots were going and who was receiving them and who was sending them back in. And there was some tracking, but just with the sheer amount of ballots, there wasn't a good chain of custody for the physical ballots either. So because of that, this flash drive here, I wrote tests for the state of Michigan. So this flash drive here had all of the ballots for Wayne County on it. And I'm here in my bedroom right now. This is all the ballots for Wayne County were on this. They're not on it anymore. I've deleted them since. But they were on that flash drive before the election, weeks before the election. So, if I can have them in my bedroom, right? Nobody blinked an eye about me having these digital files. So who else had them, right? If nobody cared that I had in my bedroom all the ballots for Wayne County, I know for a fact that when those ballots get sent to the printer, they get put on a Google Drive. Everybody thinks, Google and Dropbox and Amazon are secure platforms, but in reality, any high-level person at those companies has backdoor clearance to those drives. So, all it takes is a scan of those drives and somebody at Google can have all the ballots for Wayne County. There just is no chain of custody. And I'm not here saying that laws were broken. I'm not here saying that election source is nefarious. I'm not here saying that Dominion is even nefarious. But what I am saying is there is no chain of custody for digital ballots. So if some outside actor wanted to come in with a nefarious goal of printing 100,000 ballots before election night, it's certainly possible. All they would have needed was this. I had it in my bedroom. That's all they would have needed. And you can go to any printer, probably not a commercial one because they'd probably...
But it was already established in Arizona that this had been going through the internet.
Be like, why are you printing official ballots with us? Who are you? But if you had your own printer, I could print it on an inkjet printer at home. I could have taken one of these ballots from this flash drive and I could have printed 10,000 of them and on a laser printer at my office. And if I had, printed them, they're 8.5 by 11, so it's very common. I could print them, as long as I print them on cardstock. There's a ballot stock thickness paper that you need. But that's about it. That's about the only, and I'm pretty sure that a machine would read regular weighted paper. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that they would. They'd probably read cardstock paper too. But there's...
Okay, in all fairness, let's hear his side. I'm not buying it, but you know.
There's a specific ballot stock thickness, and I don't know if it's just regular card stock or not, or if there is actually a specific ballot stock thickness. But yeah, the machine is agnostic. As long as those timing marks, which are on the PDF, are correct, you know, a ballot that's printed by the official printer versus a ballot that's printed at home by a person that has, you know, the ballots ahead of time, because we need the ballots ahead of time because we need to write tests. You know, it's just something that we need to do. You know, and I'm not a nefarious actor. I didn't pass these ballots off to anybody, and I'm sure nobody at Election Source did, and I'm sure nobody at Dominion did. But, you know, who's to say somebody at the county knew about them, or, you know, maybe not necessarily.
No, they just said that Trump wasn't going to win.
Somebody at the county office, but somebody knew, you know, somebody knew that that these ballots were being stored somewhere, and they took them, or somebody at Google took them off of the Google Drive. I mean, there's plenty of avenues to get these ballots in digital form and print them off. So if there was election fraud, and I'm not saying that there was.
Well, we all know there was, and that's just that. That's just the way it is. Okay, I gave the devil's advocate type to that side. Now, going to a big story. This is a gentleman who was at the voting booth. Or excuse me, at the voting booth. But he is working for Dominion.
What's this guy doing? See, she's looking at her Excel spreadsheet with notes, handing it to him.
Nerd Boy's looking for a certain kind of pen for some reason. He just pulled a USB out.
Did he?
Yeah.
Where's he
Just
going?
pulled a stick.
Oh my god, is he taking it to that laptop?
Yeah. That's exactly what he did.
It should not be connected.
Yeah, why are USBs getting pulled out of a cabinet computer, and then I think he's on a mouse over there now. I could have sworn he just pulled a USB. I knew he did. I don't know what he did with it.
Those look like files from a distance, but I can't really tell. You know, like a big file folder?
Like file manager.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. It looks like large icons.
Yeah.
Which would be weird to have.
Right?
Nobody uses that for data. I use that for looking at pictures, maybe. You know what I
Scanned
mean?
images?
Huh?
Scanned images?
Yeah, but I don't think you'd be transferring scanned images. See,
You're
he just
right,
pulled
I
the
saw
stick
it,
out of the
I saw
left
it.
now, and he's taking it back over.
What are you doing?
So what do you do with the stick? Doop, 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 doop. Derp, derp, derp.
You're doing the sound effect. Oh,
It's just what he looks like to me.
took a notepad.
Derp, derp, derp.
Where is he going? What's this guy?
And this gentleman is identified. Let me get over here just for a minute. as, drum roll, Xavier, I don't know how to say his last name, works for Dominion Company. Why the hell is he there? Is the question. That is who the gentleman is. Now, to one of the most surprising portions of the day was, and I'm not going to play all of it because it's quite lengthy, but I played the most important parts, was there was a couple of gentlemen, truck drivers, and here is what they had to say. They came forward.
My name is Phil Klein. I'm the director of the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society. And I appreciate your attendance and I look forward to your questions today. First, let me give a little preface as to what the Amistad Project and the Thomas More Society has been involved in over the last several months. The Amistad Project started looking into election integrity about 18 months ago. Through that process, we have developed attorneys that are in virtually every swing state that are working on our behalf. And additionally, we have investigators that have been involved in the field for several months, developing evidence as it relates to the integrity of the 2020 election. That effort has brought us to this day. Now, it is often extraordinarily difficult after an election in the short time frame to develop substantive evidence of an effort to violate election laws and to influence the election in an improper way. And that is why we have engaged in this investigation for some time and conducted the investigation in a manner that is a little bit different than what you might assume. And I will explain that. Today, the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society, in cooperation with several whistleblowers, is releasing evidence of intentional fraudulent conduct to improperly influence the 2020 election. This evidence includes eyewitness accounts, eyewitness corroboration, and the review and assessment of tangible evidence, which supports and corroborates the statements of witnesses. Moreover, there are institutions and persons available to you who hold within their possession or within their knowledge, who can easily decide to be forthcoming and confirm the sworn statements of these whistleblowers and the other evidence which we are releasing today. Many of the people who can answer these questions thus far have refused access to the information. They have refused access to data or to share personal experiences. Refusal in such instances is done for a reason. People engage in conduct for a reason. People refuse to speak and decide to not be forthcoming. They do it for a reason. Generally, this refusal comes down to one or two reasons or a mixture of both. They are afraid, or they have done something or participated in something which they do not want others to know about. You will hear evidence detailing how 130,000 to 280,000 completed ballots which persons or a person or a machine completed, put in the envelope, placed return addresses on, and then those ballots, 130,000 to 280,000, were transported from Bethpage, New York, into Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where they disappeared on October 21st of this year. Let me restate that again. This evidence demonstrates, and it's through eyewitness testimony that's been corroborated by others through their eyewitness statements, that 130,000 to 280,000 completed ballots for the 2020 general election were shipped from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where those ballots and the trailer in which they were shipped disappeared. Also, the evidence that we have obtained indicates that on several occasions, completed ballots were shipped from a postal facility in Bethpage, New York, a postal facility that has no mail processing role in the United States Postal Service, a postal service facility that has no ability to receive incoming mail because it does not have the machines to process that mail, a postal service facility which, from persons that we've spoken with, has no basis to have completed ballots on its premises. This evidence demands investigation. This demands answers. The American people deserve such answers. We have and we are in the process of sharing this information with law enforcement. We have been contacted and we have communicated with offices for the FBI as well as United States attorneys in various jurisdictions in this nation. We have also been in contact with local prosecutors who are aware of some of our evidence. I can't speak to the scope of their investigations or to the status of their investigations. With me today are, on my right, on your left, Colonel Tony Schaefer. Colonel Schaefer has been our lead investigator for the Amistad Project, and he also accompanied me in our interview and debriefing with Mr. Jesse Morgan, who is seated next to him, who will share his story today. And Colonel Schaefer will also explain some of what Jesse will tell you that he saw and experienced on October 21st. To my left is Ethan Pease. Ethan Pease worked for a subcontracting firm for the United States Postal Service. And he's going to relate to you a story that occurred in Wisconsin when he arrived at a postal facility. Madison?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ethan. In Madison, Wisconsin, and by two separate people on two separate days was informed that ballots were being gathered on November 4th and backdated on November 3rd, tens of thousands of ballots to be delivered and counted by postal workers in that facility. To my left and to your far right is Gregory Stenstrom. Mr. Stenstrom is a computer expert. He also was a poll watcher in Delaware County. During that process, and he will describe this for you, and he's also testified, I believe, before the Pennsylvania legislature recently, he will describe to you how he was denied access. All of you know those stories. And again, I just want to mention that people deny access for a reason. They don't follow the law for a reason. And denying access to the counting room was a violation of law. We've experienced an unprecedented election in American history where America was kicked out of the counting room. All of us remember looking at the hanging chads and the dimpled chads and debating what the intent of the voter was, and that is right for America to participate in that debate. For the first time in our nation's history, in our urban core, in swing states, America was kicked out of the counting room. And you must ask, why? Why? Gregory Stenstrom will share something with you that might indicate the why. Because the conduct of the officials that he witnessed and of a private party violated all of the rules to maintaining in integrity the election and cast serious doubt upon the management of the election in Delaware County, and his observations have been mirrored elsewhere as well. Mr. Jesse Payne. Mr. Jesse Payne, to my immediate right, is a subcontractor, drives a truck for a subcontractor of the United States Postal Service. He's going to tell you his story here in a moment, but I want to help set the scene for you regarding that story. Jesse is not here to tell you that the election was stolen. He's not here to tell you that he knows enormous fraud occurred. He's here to tell you what he saw. And at great personal cost, he's willing to tell you what he saw. Don't put the burden of proving fraud on this man's shoulders. He's come here to tell you what he saw. On October 21st, Jesse was engaged in, well, let me back up. I'm sorry, Peter, let me back up. I'm going to back up because I'm going to do this backwards. You know, generally when I investigate, I oversaw the Kansas Bureau of Investigation as Attorney General, and additionally, I was a district attorney. And let me say, and if you will allow me, I'm going to ask you to indulge me in a couple of observations. And these observations, you might be redundant to your knowledge, but forgive me. No investigation starts with a conclusion. No investigation starts with a claim. Every investigation starts with questions. And so when you begin an investigation, you have to make sure that you're asking the right questions, and then you determine the most proper source to get answers for those questions so you can come to know what happened. And I want to invite all of you to participate in asking the right sources the right questions. Because some of the questions you will have are questions we cannot answer. But there are institutions and persons who have the answer. And they also control information such as video footage, such as logs, such as sign-in sheets for people who worked there or volunteered there, such as GPS positioning for tractors and trailers that work for the United States Postal Service or haul their mail. There are a lot of institutions you can go to ask the right questions. And I would invite you to participate with us in asking the right questions. And I want to offer this observation regarding evidence. I've never investigated an innocent person who did not want me to see the evidence they controlled that proved their innocence. And I've never investigated a guilty person who wanted me to see the evidence they controlled that proved their guilt. Most all criminal investigations, in fact, any investigation begins with the knowledge that something went wrong. There's a body in the road. Somebody has been shot. Somebody called 911. And most real investigation is if there's not an immediate threat to the public and we don't know who we have to chase to arrest, begins with moving backwards, not forwards. You begin to investigate backwards. And so that's how I'm going to lead you through our discussion, and it will lead up to Jesse Payne's story. Jesse Morgan. Jesse Payne was a prosecutor who worked for me. I'm sorry, Jesse. Thank you. Let's look at the blood in the street. I'm taking you over to our lawsuits right over here. These are lawsuits that we have filed. This one is in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Peter. And if you keep it, yeah, you're bringing it up? Thank you, so I can see it. What you have right here is a chart of several charts, in fact. That's okay, buddy. It's okay. We'll just go to Georgia. Keep Georgia up. This is our experts' analysis in Georgia of ballots called into question by the conduct of election officials that were in violation or sidestepped state election law. What you will see here is the first type, and let me tell you how we did this. We hired a data expert. We got the data from government. We hired some mathematicians to help crunch that data with them, and then we actually reached out and contacted voters directly to see if what they swore to as their conduct, whether they voted, whether they didn't vote, whether they requested a ballot, whether they didn't request a ballot, was mirrored by state records. And what you see right here is the estimate of illegal votes counted in Georgia at 15,331. Here is an estimate, I'm circling it, an estimate of Republican ballots that the Republican that we spoke with returned, but that state records show were not counted. 29,884. This is electors who voted where they did not reside in Georgia. 138,221. Out-of-state persons voting, 20,312. And double votes, 395. Total number of ballots in question, 204,143. We have these charts for each of the 5 states that we have recently initiated litigation in, and they will be provided to you. So how did this occur? How did it happen that these many ballots are called into question in this investigation? This is the blood in the street, so to speak. This is the evidence that something wrong occurred. Maybe not a crime, maybe people were negligent. Maybe people did a poor job, but it certainly introduces questions that we must answer. And so we start to back up. And what we see in each one of these swing states is something else that hasn't happened before. It's the consolidation of counting centers. A dramatic consolidation in the urban core of the counting centers. Now, that was done, and the explanation was COVID, that it was necessary because of COVID. I will accept that at face value, accept to state it doesn't make any sense to create a crowd to help protect against COVID. But nonetheless, they brought those persons together. Now, let's take a look at what happened in the counting centers, because there are also 2 other effects, even assuming that the proper purpose was COVID. What else happened in the counting centers? Well, I'll just take a couple of examples for you, and I'm sorry, again, I'm being redundant. You have heard this before, but it's important to understand it in the context of the story. In Michigan, I call it, what is the center called? TCF Center? The TCF Center in Michigan, the former hockey arena that they consolidated in Wayne County for the count. There were 134 counting or tables set up for each of those wards. Around them were inspectors. Those inspectors had the responsibility to take all ballots that they claimed couldn't run through the machine, and then set those ballots down, including all military ballots because of the paper that it's on, look at those ballots, and then say this person meant to vote for Biden or for Trump, and fill out pristine new ballots. These ballots would then separated, and they would cast ballots for persons who weren't there. Completing ballots of third parties who weren't there. The law allows that, by the way, because you want to be efficient in counting the ballot. But the law also says the 2 major parties must be at that table. They must be able to see what happened and then sign off that it was done validly. That's a way of putting America in the counting room. Both major political parties watching what happens. That's fair. That's transparent elections. In Wayne County, it didn't happen. What they argued is that there was a Republican in the place. They put him in the penalty box, and they couldn't see what was happening at the table. So, whether you think that's nefarious or not, that's one of the results of the consolidation of the counting centers, is that they removed what the law required, and you had partisans completing these ballots without oversight from America or the other political party as the law requires. So people violate the law for a reason. What is the reason that they violated that law? Additionally, I can tell stories in Philadelphia, I can tell stories in Fulton County, Georgia, I can tell stories in Phoenix, Arizona, but you hear those stories, you know those affidavits, you know that that happened. There are serious questions that result from it. Additionally, consolidating the counting facilities in conjunction with drop boxes, with the introduction of drop boxes. By the way, most of these drop boxes were paid for by Mark Zuckerberg's contribution to a group called the Center for Tech and Civic Life, and more on that a little bit later. Drop boxes hold anywhere from 4,000 votes or absentee ballots to up to 75,000 absentee ballots. This breached the chain of custody of the ballot in a significant way unless these officials also, thank you, there's a drop box right here. And you might recall, as it relates to drop boxes, we were promised 24/7 security. We were promised videos to watch the drop boxes. By the way, has anybody seen the videos that these election officials for every drop box that was out there? We were promised that there would be integrity in the flow and chain of custody of these ballots. That means they must have logs of who had keys to the drop boxes. That means legitimately they have to have a two-person per key system so that there's not one partisan who might pick up those ballots in a heavily Republican area and lose them on the way to the counting center, or vice versa, pick up ballots in a heavily Democrat area and lose them on the way to the counting center. Did they have two-person, one key? Do they have the logs of when these drop boxes were picked up? Will they ever release video of these drop boxes as they promised? So far, we have demanded such information. It has been refused. People refuse for a reason. What is that reason? We have election experts that have been working with us who say that that conduct in breaking the chain of custody prevents the certification of the election process as applied under federal law, the Help America Vote Act. And we will have their testimony moving forward in numerous cases that the way that they did this election was not consistent with federal law in every one of these urban areas in every swing state. And the question is, why? Why not follow the law? So we started moving backwards. And as we move backwards to understand exactly what happened in these counting centers and recognize that all of these drop boxes and the consolidation of the counting centers allowed for and justified the delivery of tens of thousands of ballots, hundreds of thousands of ballots late in the election in one location with one truck or two trucks delivering in an area that is away from any partisan observers, we began to have more questions. You see, if you're going to infuse a lot of fraudulent ballots into a system with a machine counting system, you've got a couple of things you have to take care of. First of all, I see some of you with your computers. And yeah, I remember my first computer was about this big, and it was less powerful than my watch. But now these things do amazing things. And they also count our ballots. But you can't see how they are counting them. You can't see in that machine. No one can, unless you're able to have access and print off logs which show how that machine has been operating. We have demanded the logs. There are certain types of logs that talk about the access. The machine records any other access. It records all it's doing. No one has produced logs. No one. Why? In fact, it is our belief that in some of these areas, the state contract actually allows the logs to be the proprietary property of the vendor. If that is the case, we have signed away our right to see how the machines are operating. That in and of itself should be a national controversy. But let me move on a little bit further as it relates to the machines. Gregory Stenson saw behavior in Delaware County, and there are affidavits elsewhere, that show intentional conduct that are a breach in election procedures and actually collectively. I'm not saying they did. It is a good question for them. Actually would allow the alteration of the count, but most certainly breaks the chain of custody from critical jump drives or V-chips to the machines, to the precinct, to the ballot, that makes auditing extraordinarily difficult. Intentional conduct that makes auditing the performance of those machines to the integrity of the count extraordinarily difficult. So right now, I'd like to have Mr. Stenstrom come up and share with you what he experienced in Delaware County.
Thank you, Phil. I was a Republican poll watcher and observer in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. As I previously testified before a special committee of the Pennsylvania Legislature in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania last Wednesday, I'm a citizen, a former commanding and executive officer in the Navy, a veteran of foreign wars, a data scientist, and an expert in security and fraud. I witnessed irregularities at 7 polls and 22 precincts on Election Day, primarily poll workers providing voters regular ballots instead of provisional ballots, when records indicated that those voters had requested mail-in ballots. But what I observed at the centralized Delaware County vote counting center when I arrived there at 6 p.m., and then over the next 3 days, was a forensically destructive process that involved mail-in ballots, Dropbox ballots, and electronic USB V-card vote uploads. Despite possessing valid credentials, it was a 5-hour battle just to gain entry to the main counting room. And it would be another 3 days before I could secure a court order to observe the sequestered back rooms for 5 minutes every 2 hours to observe ballots and how they were ingested. When I was finally allowed inside, I saw many boxes of 500 ballots each being carried in and out of the sequestered back room. The election officials in charge of operations refused to let me or other credentialed observers inside the room, even though we had every right to enter, and objected. There were disturbing breaches of protocol taking place in plain sight. At one point, I saw unsecured USB V-card drives from voting machines being separated from their accompanying cartridges and paper tapes and commingled together by election workers. These actions destroyed any forensic auditability and corrupted the chain of custody. Formal objections to election officials and law enforcement officers that were present went unanswered. Later, I saw the voting machine warehouse supervisor for Delaware County carrying in unsealed bags of unsecured USB V-card drives, which he inexplicably proceeded to plug into computers, the vote counting computers, and upload into the official vote tally. Despite formal objections to senior law enforcement that was present and election board officials, he was allowed to continue. When he was finished, the vote count shot up by 50,000 votes for Vice President Biden. 47 USB cards were missing at the end of last week. As of today, that number has reportedly grown to 64. When I finally gained access to the sequestered room, this is the 3 days later, where mail-in ballots were ingested, I witnessed 60 to 70,000 unopened mail-in ballots in sequestered back offices. That was on Thursday at 3:30, after the vote was supposedly counted. They remain unaccounted for. We don't know where they are. All signed paper chain of custody documents are missing, despite attempts by Democrat election officials to recreate them. My questions then and now remain: where did the ballots come from? Where did these mail-in ballots come from? And where did they go? Thank you for your time. Phil, I appreciate being here.
And there's another question. Why? Why engage in conduct that you know destroys the chain of custody of this important material in a vital election, unless there is an objective? People don't violate the law intentionally. Always called her
Move ahead
Rena.
a little bit.
As she grew up and she reached the age of majority, she changed her name. And by the way, changes of name and those lists are also available. She legally changed her name to Rena. So she was Rena Billis. Then she voted for Michael Dukakis. Not as Rena Billis, it might be after she was married, but she voted for Dukakis in 1994. She was a little bit hesitant for me to say that because she knows my history as a Republican. But she voted for Michael Dukakis. Then she moved out of Michigan. She got married, and now her name is Rena Linda Voltson. And she hasn't been called Annie Billis since she was 18, and she never registered under that name. With all this talk of fraud, now what are the odds that Rena Linda Voltson would go back and check at her Michigan registration when she's living in Virginia to see if she was registered under a name she never registered? You see, you can look at all these voting histories and you can tell who never votes. You can determine who's not going to check their voting history. You can also...
But it's also important, you know, when a loved one or a friend passes away, it's very important that we all make sure they're off the voting roll. That's kind of our responsibility, right? We've had to do it with my relatives. Hopefully, a lot of people have done it with theirs.
Also obtain names that center around their identity but are actually false. She was registered in Michigan as Annie Billis. Somebody did that, not her. And the question is why? Well, I believe we're starting to hold. At some point, it doesn't hold. So one of the important things I want to mention and highlight about Gregory's statement is he saw those mail bins. I don't know if you know what I'm speaking about. We've got pictures of them somewhere up here, don't we, Peter? The actual mail bins of the bulk mail. Thank you. This is going to tie to Jesse Morgan's story. Not that, I'm sorry. We'll get to that. Do we have the picture of the bulk mail plastic bins? I thought I saw it. We'll find it for you. You might have seen it. I don't know if any of you have done bulk mail, but there's these heavy plastic bins, and you insert the bulk mail vertically, and you generally organize it by zip code to make it efficient. And Greg saw many of those being brought in to that counting center in Delaware County. That type of bulk mail. Here it is. These plastic bins right here. They're in different sizes, but Greg, you saw these types of bins in the Delaware Counting Center, and that's important.
Now, there is also a picture, and I don't know if it's authentic, but these type of mail bins were in the back of a truck that had Biden on it. Now, I'm not going to confirm or deny it yet, but I'm going to throw it out there in case it is true. Just saying. You know, you never know.
When we get to Jesse Morgan's story here in a minute. So, you have to control some of the ballots. We've shown how perhaps you can create persons like that and cast ballots on their behalf. And I would encourage you, again, to look at our lawsuits. You will see that there are ballots being cast for persons that didn't cast them. I'm looking right now. It's right there on the bottom, 29,000 in Georgia. No, I'm sorry, it's 15,331. Ballots that were not requested that were cast. Right there. And that's in one category that we're seeing that. So we know ballots that weren't requested were cast. We know there are ways to create identities to cast those ballots, and we have sworn statements supporting them. So now how do you enter these ballots into the counting stream? How do you infuse tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of ballots into the counting stream? Well, we have with us Ethan Pease. Ethan was a subcontractor for a postal a company that delivered mail in Madison, Wisconsin. And he's going to tell you his story about backmarking ballots in the post office. Now, I want to say this. You've heard this pop up elsewhere. Traverse City, Michigan. Whistleblower steps forward and said the postmaster ordered him to backdate ballots. You all know about the gentleman in Erie, Pennsylvania that they claim recanted, but then he said, I never recanted. He overheard it. There's also Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, in which a gentleman was told that he must throw away or put in the bulk undeliverable mail all Trump mail and deliver Biden mail. There's a lot of whistleblowers in the United States Postal Service that give pause for concern. And Ethan has come forward and is going to share his story about concerns in Madison, Wisconsin.
Thank you, Phil. During the run-up to and on Election Day, I was working as a temporary hire at United Mailing Services, UMS, a USPS subcontractor in Wisconsin. I began employment on August 26, 2020 as a route driver and box truck driver. This meant my job was to pick up mail on a predetermined route and deliver it to UMS for sorting and metering. I would then take the sorted mail in my box truck to USPS. In September or October, I began to deliver mail and ballots from UMS to USPS as part of my evening delivery duties. I knew this because there was special bins marked for ballots only. On one occasion, I forgot to retrieve the ballots for transportation and had to go back for them. After that, I always made sure to check that I had the ballot bins loaded for transport. On November 2nd, 2020, I noticed that there was only one ballot in the bin for delivery to USPS. And on November 3rd, Election Day, there were no ballots in the bin for delivery. One can imagine my surprise then when the next day, November 4th, I was asked by a senior USPS employee named Monte if I had forgotten any ballots the night before. Monte explained that an order came down from the Wisconsin-Illinois chapter of USPS that 100,000 ballots were missing. Monte then told me that his post office had dispatched employees to look for the missing ballots around 4 a.m., and that only 7 or 8 were found at UMS. Based on my previous experience and habit of double-checking for ballots, I believe that to be a lie. The following day, November 5th, 2020, I had a conversation with a different USPS named Rachel, in which she admitted that USPS employees were ordered to backdate ballots that were received too late to be lawfully counted. I asked Rachel if I would get in trouble with my boss for those ballots the other night, referring to the allegedly missing ballots I discussed with USPS employee Monte on November 4th, 2020. No, you wouldn't, she responded, as long as they were postmarked for the 3rd. She continued, that's why they had us do that. I didn't bring any of this to the attention of my supervisors at USPS at the time due to what I perceived to be their hostility towards President Donald Trump and their evident contempt for the law. I heard those same 2 post office employees making jokes about taking mail-in ballots for Trump and throwing them away. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Biden supporter either. In fact, I didn't vote for either of the main candidates. But something profoundly wrong occurred in Wisconsin during the presidential election, and the American people have a right to know about it. Thank you.
Now, you probably caught that, but it is significant that Ethan firmly believes that he did deliver all ballots, and that falsely postal workers claimed at a time when they were told to round up 100,000 ballots, found ballots within the stream of mail that he was responsible for. So perhaps Ethan missed those 8 or so ballots. Or perhaps there's an intentional insertion of fraudulent ballots that were completed by others. He said, "What do you want to know?" I said, "The truth." And Jesse revealed to me that he had been a drug addict, that he'd been arrested, that he served some time, that for a while in his life he wanted to do things his way, that he violated probation, that he went back up, and that when he saw his first daughter born, he decided to turn around his life. And he's been sober since then. I said, "You know this is going to come down on your head. If you step forward, this is going to come down on your head. There will be people who aren't concerned about what you saw. They will be more concerned about trying to destroy you because they don't like what you saw." And I asked him if he had told his 3 daughters that their father had been in prison. And he said he hadn't. They didn't know. Now they will. Now they will. This man is telling the truth. You can confirm the truth. We have a responsibility to get to the answers of the questions raised by what he saw. And if this nation continues in destroying individuals rather than listening to what they have to say, I don't know if we can make ourselves out of this wilderness that we've created. I truly ask you to listen to what this man says, because he is a truth teller. Jesse?
Thanks, Phil. Tell you what, first time I met him, I was like, this dude's pretty cool. And then afterwards, I was like, this dude's an asshole. I want to tell you how I see it, and I'm a pretty straight shooter, all right? I'm sorry if I swore. I don't know if I'm allowed to or not, but I'm a truck driver, so be prepared, all right? They got me reading papers, and I don't like reading, I'll be honest with you, okay? I didn't want to come. I tell you what, I have everything to lose and nothing to gain from this, all right? Everything to lose, nothing to gain. And I'm already losing. Okay? So for me to come here, it was a big step. And for me to come here, it was just more so I had to put myself to the side and I have to worry about everyone else. Because I believe everyone else in America should know, all right? Just a little past. He kind of gave you a little rundown. I served some time, had some charges. You guys want to run with it, you can run with it. But this is what the real story is. The story is what we're here for today, all right? I didn't want this put on me, but for some reason, it's on me, and here I am, all right? I drive tractor trailer for U.S. Postal Service, subcontractor. I drive a route transporting mail from Lancaster, Pennsylvania to Bethpage, New York to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and back to Lancaster. On October 21st, when I arrived for my usual route in Bethpage, New York, an expediter made 3 references to ballots that were to be loaded into my trailer, including saying, hey, you've got a ballot today, or you have ballots today, and even showing me a piece of registered mail and saying someone really wanted their ballot to count. In total, I saw 24 Gaylords. Where's that box? Right here. You got this guy right here. That's kind of a good representation of a Gaylord, all right? They're not usually put together with duct tape, though. here you go. This is pretty good too, but for a visual, I mean, that will work, all right? So, in total, I saw 24 Gaylords, or large cardboard containers of ballots loaded into my trailer. These Gaylords contain plastic trays, I call them totes, but trays will work, of ballots stacked on top of each other. All the envelopes were the same size. I could see the envelopes had handwritten addresses, return addresses, and I could even tell that one was marked registered mail. That one was off to the side, all right? They were complete ballots. I didn't think much of it at the time. At Bethpage, I was first loaded with 2 tall Gaylords. So picture that thing there, or this little representation here, but this tall, all right? So I was loaded with 2 tall Gaylords, okay? And that were, hold on, where was I at? That had mixed mail pieces bound for Lancaster. These Gaylords were loaded first because they would be the last off my trailer. The remainder of the truck was loaded with complete ballots bounded for Harrisburg. I then drove to Harrisburg with the ballots. Usually I offload in one of the 7 docks every day, but not on October 21st. I wasn't allowed to offload. That's different. Whenever I pull into Harrisburg, I go around and I get unloaded, and then I roll out. Not that day, all right? Not that day. Instead, I was made to wait for roughly 6 hours in the yard, from 9:15 a.m. to 3 p.m. This really ticked me off, all right? Because my brother was in town. He just moved back up, and I wanted to spend some time with him. I tried to get the attention of postal workers, but no one would tell me what's going on. All of this was weird. I arrived at about the same time every day. The expediter scans all my seals and barcodes, and they unload me. But for the first time, but from the time I first arrived in Harrisburg from Bethpage, everything got weird. None of that happened. After waiting 6 hours, I went inside to figure out what's going on. I was told to wait for the transportation supervisor. This was also weird. 16 months I've been doing this. I haven't ever talked to the transportation supervisor for United States Postal Service. I talk to an expediter. I come in, I see an expediter, that's who I deal with. If I have an issue, it's the expediter. I don't deal with anyone else but the expediter. I never talk to the United States Postal Service's transportation supervisor. Let's make that clear. I have my own transportation supervisor for the company that I work for. He's the one that gives me the details. He's the one that I listen to. I don't listen to this guy. He's the guy that would contact my boss if he needed something ran different. I've never spoken with this transportation supervisor from the United States Postal Service. They don't speak to people like me. He's a top guy. He's the kind of guy that would speak to my boss, not a trucker like me. The supervisor told me to drive to Lancaster without being unloaded in Harrisburg. This made no sense to me. I knew the ballots were loaded for Harrisburg, and that if I was to go to Lancaster, they would have to off-unload my those pallets in Lancaster to take off Lancaster stuff, to put the ballots back on the trailer, to send it back to Harrisburg. Doesn't make no sense. This was a real screw up in my thinking. I wanted I wanted my ticket. So whenever I go to a place, when I go there and whenever I'll leave, I'll get a ticket. I'll get a ticket, a slip, whatever you want to call it. It's the date, time that I'm supposed to be there. It'll have my trailer number on it. It'll have how much I'm loaded. It'll have the seal number. It has my name. It'll have who was the expediter. So I wanted my ticket, my slip. I call them tickets. Some people call them slips, okay? And then because I was there for 6 hours, I wanted my late slip too, because I wanted to be paid for sitting in that yard for 6 hours. So I wanted the ticket and the late slip for stopping in at Harrisburg. Also, I wanted it because if they tell me to take this load to Lancaster, I don't want to pull up the Lancaster of Harrisburg crap and be like, yeah, they just told me to come here and not have no ticket, because they don't look like I just came straight here, you know? Just to prove that I was there. And so others would know I wasn't the person that screwed this up. A ticket is always provided to a driver when they arrive at a United States Postal Service facility that proves you were there. The transportation supervisor refused to give me a ticket and told me to leave. I then demanded he give me a late slip, since I wanted to get paid for the time I was sitting there and waiting for them to offload me. He refused to give me that too. He was kind of rude and wouldn't explain anything to me. He just told me to go to Lancaster. I then drove to Lancaster, unhooked my trailer in its normal place, and then drove my truck to where I always park it in a nearby lot, and then I went home. The next day, it just got weirder. As I arrived at Lancaster's United States Postal Service facility with my tractor, I went to hook up to my trailer, and my trailer was gone. Not there no more. 10R 1440. Since I started driving that Bethpage route, I've always had trailer 10R 1440. I like that trailer. It was a nice trailer. I know you guys probably don't really know nothing about truck driving or trailers or anything, but the rear tandems had with your driving light, the rear tandems will actually, the front axle will actually go up. Nice air ride. The doors on it worked great. Some of the trailers that place has, you could honestly put it on the back of a carrier and drop it off in the middle of the ocean and no one would worry about it. So that trailer I really liked, okay? What happened on October 21st was a series of unusual events that cannot be a coincidence. I know I saw ballots with return addresses filled out, thousands of them, thousands. Loaded onto my trailer in New York and headed for Pennsylvania. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal. In fact, I thought it was really awesome. I really did. I was like, sweet, I'm doing something for the presidential race, you know, this is cool. But as things became weirder, I got to thinking and wondered why I was driving complete ballots from New York to Pennsylvania. I didn't know why, so I decided to speak up. And that's what I'm doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Colonel Schaefer is going to demonstrate how we made an estimate of the number of ballots that Jesse had in his load on that occasion. And I want to remind you, we've received corroboration, not from Jesse, but from others, that this happened multiple times from that particular facility. Colonel?
Attorney General Klein, thank you for the honor of leading this investigative team, and as we speak, we have members of our team in the field continuing operations. Jesse has been put through the ringer. We have been intaking a lot of whistleblowers. They are brave people who seek nothing but to provide you the truth, and that's what we're all seeking here. So again, I'm grateful to Attorney General Klein for the benefit and privilege of doing this, and I think that's what we're all trying to do here today, is get to the truth. I'm going to outline some of the issues which makes Jesse's story so peculiar and so troubling regarding what we now know to be fact. Jesse's one of those unsung, invisible heroes who works in the dead of the night that makes our lives better.
Right.
As he said, he has nothing to gain here, but everything to lose. And that's why it's important that we listen to him. So the first question we should all ask is, where's Jesse's trailer? Where is it? Where'd it go? What was the route it took after it left? I think it's a reasonable question, one that I think any reasonable American who's curious about 24 pallets of ballots, where they went. So we have a number of teams supporting the Amistad effort. One of them is my own London Center intelligence team. They did the estimate of ballots. So just so you all understand what we're talking about, depending on the density, depending on the trays, and again, this leads back to Greg's story, seeing these ballots showing up in the counting rooms in the middle of the night. That's the pointy end of the spear. We trace it back through all the different machinations to Jesse, to his mass transportation of these things. And I can tell you, other investigations that are now ongoing with our field elements are developing the next set of leads. It doesn't stop at Bethpage. It only begins there. And as Phil said, all investigations start with questions. We have additional questions we're now going to answer. But to the point of this, 24 Gaylords full of these things, not mailed like they normally would be. And let me make this very clear. The Bethpage Center is not a place where you can frank or process mail. It's a bulk mail center. As a matter of fact, it's called a process and distribution center. That means big bulk.
Uh-oh.
Rooms in the middle of the night. That's the pointy end of the spear. We trace it back through all the different machinations to Jesse, to his mass transportation of these things. And I can tell you, other investigations that are now ongoing with our field elements are developing the next set of leads. It doesn't stop at Bethpage. It only begins there. And as Phil said, all investigations start with questions. We have additional questions we're now going to answer. But to the point of this, 24 Gaylords full of these things, not mailed like they normally would be. And let me make this very clear. The Bethpage Center is not a place where you can frank or process mail. It's a bulk mail center. As a matter of fact, it's called a process and distribution center. That means big.
Well, it seems to be stuck there. I think we all got the idea. So we all just gonna have to wait and see what happens. Rudy and his team are on it. They are doing the process. And if there's anybody who has any eyewitness accounts, please come forward. These men are really brave to come through. They have, as they said, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. They're doing what's right. As of all the witnesses, they are doing the right thing. They are protecting our republic. We need to fix this. And we need to fix it fast. We should never have to go through this again. Ever. I'm going to distribute. Well, one in the chat, I can only see actually D-Live. Would you like to see a quick video on the way out? I think y'all like it. Let's go ahead. What the hell?
To a bunch of young fucking wussies who live at home with their moms until they're fucking 31 and can't take a punch because they're pussies. Can't make them get a job even though they're all in debt, and they'll lecture you about being politically correct. They're crying and whining on the titties of their mamas. So here's a song for all the prima donnas. Fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right, fuck your feelings. It don't affect me, but we don't need 1,000 terms for your sexuality. We're so damned emotional, been crying for a while, but the world can't run on rainbows and unicorn smiles. There's a solution, if you'd shut up and listen, put the effort in a job that you're putting into bitchin', suck it up, buttercup. Do this and you'll be fine, grow up hair and wipe the tears from your vagina. Fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right, wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. The timeout generation that needed the switch got participation trophies and trolled the internet. Social media warriors who sit at home and pout. Now these weenies want a bunch of fucking handouts. Fuck that and fuck your feelings. No one gives a fuck about your issues, your problems, your shitty fucking luck. This generation's fucked, a bunch of fucking weaklings. So wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. That's right, wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. It's easy, just wipe your tears and fuck your fucking feelings. Fuck 'em all.
Dedicated to any troll out there. Thank you, Humi. That's good. I like that. I thought you would too. Have a good night, everybody. I'm going to end up, let's see, open up the chest. Distribute the lemons. See who gets them. God bless all of you. Thank you for joining. I do appreciate all of you very much. I hope this is very educational in a way and kind of waking up some people as well. And God bless the President of the United States. Vice President, God bless Secret Service, keep them safe, and law enforcement, and military, first responders, Border Patrol, and the Coast Guard. God bless you. Humi got 55.8 lemons. Congrats. God bless all of you. I do appreciate you coming in once again, and I hope you do join me probably tomorrow. I know we're going to have Rudy in Michigan tomorrow. Hopefully, because I've heard different stories. But as far as I know, he's going to be here. And we all need to stay strong. Wake up anybody you can. If you want to walk away, come on over. It is going to be okay. I know people should say, or I've heard people say, well, don't say that. Well, why not? You know what? Yeah, we got to fight. But we also don't need to be doubters. Everything is going to be fine, but we're going to keep fighting on. We're not giving up. We got to show the love to the president because he shows love to us and to this country. We will get through this, I promise you, and it is going to be glorious. As far as I can tell, what Sidney Powell says, it's going to be biblical. She's got something, but she's not telling. And that's what I like about this administration and people who support General Flynn through his battle. They're not giving away their hand. Everybody's saying, well, we don't know what General AG Barr's doing. We don't know what Durham's doing. They're doing something. But that's what I also like about them, is they're not giving away their hand. What is this? The Obama administration? Jesus Christ. They told everybody everything. They had no secrets. They told us when they're pulling out troops. How many? When? That was stupid. This is a smart administration. They keep things to themselves and tell us what we need to know. And that's what I like. God bless everybody. See ya later. Please support each other. Be kind to one another. And God bless the United States of America with all her glory.